Coming from the Truspace, we ain't answer to big neighbors. I don't give a fuck what you say. Found the universal coochie, planting seeds and birds fruit. Now I'm really looking juicy. Welcome to the Truspace. Yeah, bitch, welcome to the Truspace. Welcome to the Truspace. Yeah, bitch, welcome to the Truspace.
What's good, y'all? My name is Open Book. It's my partner.
Hey guys, this is Hearth. Welcome back to Truspace.
Yeah, and this is how you can take your power back. And the way you take your power back is by unlocking all 12 sections of that astrology wheel. And we're gonna walk you through how you can go through all areas and spectrums of your life, how they lead into one each other, and how you can act within these areas of life to take your power back from the external forces that come and push you and force you to act out these areas subconsciously. So yeah, we'll break down how you can use all of these aspects fluently into taking your own power back, you understanding and utilizing the influences that make up reality to create your own reality. Understanding the wheel in each area is how you become a co-creator with God. There's no other way. Even if you do it without astrology, guarantee we start chopping it up, your understanding of the world is exactly what astrology would be. So that's why people think that astrology, based off of the system and the words that are being used, is needed. It's not. It's just a way to organize the experiences that we are going through. I'm sure ancestrally, when we were going through these energies, you didn't even need to talk. Why would you need to talk? You look at the nigga, in your mind you would just think Mars. The nigga's thinking Mars too. He's like, oh, you know this is Mars. You don't even need to talk at that level, because we were so in tune with our internal world, because we unlocked all aspects of those, and that's what made us develop it. That's why we organized astrology in the way that we did. And I challenge anybody to tell me that life doesn't split up into these 12 parts, and that it's not an accurate representation of this life. I challenge you to find another system that is as comprehensive and as holistic as astrology and these 12 sections on the chart, the 12 houses.
And you can't argue against it, because astrology is all about understanding space, and you can see how it could correlate directly to the current moment that you are. Right now I'm in my house, will be my fourth house, will be Pisces, and the influences there in my chart is related to what's happening right here. I can explain it to you, and you are in your own place, in your own, basically your own fourth house, but you also have other places within your parameter that you go into that's different than my space that I go into, which is split to different spaces. So I have my own natal chart placement, and you have your own natal chart placement. So you can see how everybody have their own spaces, 360 parameter, which is divided into 12 parts that you go through, which is it's all about finding it. It's all about what correspondence you find in the third dimension that's related to your natal chart, which is a representation of you in the fourth, sixth, seventh dimension, the realm of like mentalities, the stars. But you are a snapshot in the third dimension from about that brain, that floating mentality, and things along these lines, and you manifest these experiences that's related to your natal chart, related to your houses, where your chakras is, your sun, your moon, and so on and so forth, and you get to see that as you go through life. This is why astrology is not stationary. Astrology is all about transitioning. This is what like Dolo speaks about. This is what takes like astrology to the next level. From there you could understand how you could transit how from your fourth house to your third house, and what's the distance between them, and how much energy would spend compared to go from your fourth house to your 10th house, which would be way more energy because it's an opposition 180 degree. And then it just goes on, and then you would end up learning more about your own internal space, because you learn how your body divided into 12 parts and how you move your awareness through different body parts. And specifically, if you have a certain placement, you have more awareness in certain body parts and things along these lines. This is where people have more attributes towards things that other people don't have. This is what makes us all similar, but what makes us all similar at different but also similar at the same time, because we're doing the same thing with different we using our natures, but it's how we use our natures, basically. And astrology is about learning our natures and how we got trapped in our natures. And this body is basically the manifestation of your nature. So the more you learn about your body, the more you learn about your natures, and so on and so forth. And you have no way out. You have no way out of it, because that's the conclusion I think they got into. They got into a long time ago in the ancient civilization, especially when the Romans started taking everything. They reached the conclusion that everything's going in cycle, and basically everything kept happening over and over. And if you're an astrologist who keep track of the cycles, you can understand that you keep seeing the same corresponding over and over. You could just imagine if you're an empire with few general, how frustrated you would get after learning about all these knowledges that the stars provide, and then eventually snapping and then decide to rule over a world, and then realizing I'm gonna create my own world using that whole system, basically.
My own interpretations, It's Zeus now. No, it's not. Whatever other version you have, no, it's Zeus now.
And you can't get mad at them, because you would get so inspired about what you've done and what you see. You write an allegory too, yo.
Dead ass. Dead ass. And that's exactly what happened. Look at how popular Star Wars is. Star Wars, it's funny, even in English class, they'll show you the hero's journey, which is the bomber clot zodiac wheel. Yo, I don't know why they try and rip off things like that. It's crazy. Google the fucking hero thing and tell me it ain't a blood clot circle with fucking I don't know how much slices they have in it, but it follows. It's the Jesus story. It's literally the Jesus story, where he goes through all of that cyclic experience, and because it's replicating that Jesus story, it's Amun Ra, it's Quetzalcoatl, that's why Star Wars was the biggest movie, because it's playing on those archetypes. One Piece is the biggest anime in the world because it reflects the fucking planets 100%. 100%.
This is why I feel like anime basically took over the world, because their ability to basically describe energies that's behind the scene through perfect shape or form, aka anime, the medium too, because they perfected basically the interpretation. This is why they dominate certain Western mentalities so hard.
Absolutely. Even look at stuff like Naruto. It rings so true because we have chakra. We have energy flowing through us. We have elemental natures. We have all of that shit was so real. All of that shit was so real. Down to geographical locations. Oh, this is the land of fire. So everybody here has certain tendencies and attributes. Over there is the land hidden in the leaves. They had that aspect. The village hidden in the clouds in the land of waves or something like that. They had different aspects.
But it's also interesting how you can see in anime they're inspired by certain biblical allegory. I remember in Naruto, when we got towards the ending, they started bringing the tree of life, or the fruit of the divine tree, basically. And I was like, where basically they got it basically from the Bible, and they want Madara wants to put everybody in a dream, and it's crazy how they getting inspired by biblical allegories to add to their own ideas and so on and so forth. This is why it makes their stories more powerful, gives them more impact.
Absolutely.
There's an anime called the Seven Deadly Sins, but it's based on obviously those different allegory, but put in an anime medium, it just amplifies it, yo.
And that's what that's what we've lost, because we have all different types of movies and TV shows, which I'm sure to a degree, like what we're talking about with these ones, with anime and shit and stuff like that, they do carry those traits, but it's not done intentionally, and this is where we get lost. The ancients had mythology. That was the entire purpose of I could sit here and tell you a whole bunch of keywords of Aries, and you still won't understand. But I could tell you about Hercules going slapping a bitch, cutting Shorty's snakes off her head top, and all different, and you'll get away. The trials and tribulations he goes through having those, and how other people interact with it, and all of that. You get an in-depth understanding of that energy. No one can tell me Luffy ain't the sun. I dare anybody. He's wearing a blood clot straw hat. He's literally wearing a straw hat. When you look at the sun, it's like yellow, or I guess it's more of the artistic rendition, but you get like the red line around it, but the interior is yellow, if you get what I mean. That's literally his hat. But yeah, how they break down these aspects in these shows, we're really missing the intentionality and how we can draw our lives. So I applaud people to, just like what Harold was saying, come up with your own analogies, come up with your own storyline, come up with your own sun traveling through the 12 houses and what that looks like, your own Jesus story with you as the main character. And this is what we're about to teach you how to do.
And then, like, you understand like how Masons talk in certain allegory, how they would say like I'm going east, and then you understand east is correlated to the first house. That means they're going to the place dealing with the first birth, and then they would say, oh, I went east to get my children, my ideas, and then took them from east, went south, and then south where? To my mother house, which would be like allegory to Cancer, fourth house, and then I took them there to feed them, to nurture them, and like shit like that. You could come up with your own like correspondence, which is just gonna be so concrete, as long as it follows certain transitions, alignment, which correlates with everybody's subconscious mind. So you can't argue against it. It's just
Can't argue at all.
It's also it's a bit of a computer system there is for you to use. You're not gonna it's for everybody to use basically if you know how to use it. But then it's up to you to do all the energy work for you to actually do that, which is actually the hardest part about it, because then you have to play out certain virtues and principles, start to correlate your routines and the way you do your things in the third dimension a certain way, because you can't waste time, and certain energies take you like a lot of work to do, and you can't like stay away from the task, because certain opportunities comes, just like how stars align with each other. Certain sextiles happen at certain times, certain opposition happen at certain times, and these create different position, different opportunities, different path, different lights you could see, different people, shapes and forms, places for you to go into.
Absolutely. And we all get so stuck in our routines and patterns, forgetting that or just like how you're talking about with the zodiac signs. Hold on, I'm getting my camera back up.
Yeah.
But just like how we were talking about the zodiac signs, and how we all are our natal charts, and how we all have different percentages and concentrations of certain energies. Oh, bumbleclot. Jeez. My phone died. Hold on. But yeah, 100%. And this is how we forget those areas of life, those other areas of life, because we have planets, stellium, shit. I have stellium in the 5th house. You know what I mean? Yeah, so do you, So there's such a heavy focus in so much areas of life where I'm good at certain things, I have several trines, so those houses would be good and stuff like that. But then I have oppositions and a whole different type of stuff. My opposition, I have a big opposition with my sun and Saturn, which has dominated my life. It's always been me against the world. It's always been me against authority. It's always been like that. Even before I knew astrology, before I knew anything, I've always had that perspective, and that dominated my life, and it's in my 4th and 10th house. So it's always about home, it's always having to deal with those and my position in the world. Like stuff like relationships, maybe I wasn't too keyed on that area of life, or managing in the area of life, 6th house, work and dedication and all of those aspects, 8th house, vulnerabilities and all of that different type of stuff. it kind of gets pushed to the side, even though they still affect my life and they're still there. But I'm so focused on that 10th house, 4th house opposition dominates so much of my mind that these other aspects of life get neglected. So while I'm dealing with that power struggle, other things are slipping. So if I really want to take power and control in my life, these other aspects of my life can probably even help me with those areas by establish a better equilibrium so I can go and tackle those problems better. If everything else in your life is going good, a certain problem happens, you're able to take care of it, you know? If you're broke, you don't have a job, and you have all of this, and you have all of that, you know, everything, and you break your arm, you know what I mean? Like, you're kind of fucked. But if you were, you know, stable in a certain situation and whatever, oh, it's fine. I broke my arm. Oh, that's fine. I still have the trials and tribulation. I'm trying to rehabilitate it. But because of everything else was balanced in my life, it works out better. Oh, my relationships, my parents, my significant other, my friends don't get mad at me because I'm all crippled up and or whatever. While, you know, the other person who doesn't have those things, just them breaking their arm puts strain on a relationship. You know, because now the other person has to do, because there was so much things that they were neglecting within that relationship already, that this new thing coming up switches up the whole equilibrium. That's why you need all 12 areas of life under control if you want to be a co-creator with God and start manifesting the reality you want. You can't neglect one. You can't neglect
and
one.
then through like understand the 12th house, to not only understand your natal chart, you'll learn your own space, but you learn the space that everybody lives in, how some people are separated from different geographical location, and how that creates certain more attributes to what makes them different than you are. You might be where it's more close to the winter season energy, or you might be close to where it's south energy season, summer season, or spring season, or the western world, and so on and so forth. And through learning your own space where your energy are correlated, you see how you may have benefited from being in a certain space than from being from another place, and you can understand why certain spirit from, maybe say, people from the eastern continent, immigrants, will come to the western continent to detach from a lot of their natural like religious aspects and like societal aspect, to get reintroduced to more liberal civilized world. This is why you come into Canada, America, they give you citizenship, so what you feel part of, you're part of this place, you are a Canadian, you're a citizen of this world, and you have to give up some of the things that you used to do back home, and vice versa, where people in the Western society who might be born here might move into like say India and shit, like to learn more about like spirituality and shit like that, go taste more spices, see different accumulation of things, as opposed to what they have here in like the Western world, where it's a more based on like scarcity, where we talked about it before.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And you see that
this is why
that
rich people go to, like, this is why people go to like warm areas for vacations and shit like that, because in the astrology too, it's related to having fun and then entertaining yourself, like the 5th house and shit like that. You wouldn't want to have fun in like a cold environment. Like, having fun is correlated to the concept of heat, because heat moves things, it circulate all the way to the point that people like enjoy the deepest form of heat, which would be like sex, and people won't correlate heat to enjoyment and wouldn't understand that a coldness would be the opposite, would be like maybe hate, detachment. For example, it would play out in biology, like look how your sexual organ work. It needs heat to work, and that's how you enjoy yourself. If it's cold, like
a lion, imagine a cold coochie. Well, I'd be terrified, yo. My whole body will stiff up. I'm like, yo,
So,
what's
like,
going on?
This is why we could argue things like people who are from hotter areas, they could produce more children or have bigger families and shit like that, or people from colder environment, they would want to have lesser children, but they would be more correlated towards building, doing really yang masculine shit like that. Like if you study people like the Hans, the Mongolian cultures and shit like that, these people are tilted towards like the north and the east. And northeast, that's like one of the most like Hellenistic places in terms of energy, like a lot of war, like a lot of fighting. Like this is what all the way in the MMA you can see it right now. All these Russians from the Eastern continent and shit like
The Augustanians, mountain.
all these people like mini Orions, people like playing out like in shape and forms basically.
Wrestle with bears. It's all law in fighting. Very singular, and you know that's their life. It's MMA, just like with the Eastern continent, where individuality is not as hard. You don't have to tell them about certain individual aspects without the distractions of the Western world, which is on the west, which like what you're saying, which is colder. We're showing you how these energies correlate with the times of year and the seasons, and how they also correlate with your emotional life and your biology, all at the same time. Remember, your emotional life is chemical reactions going on in your body, not to take away the spiritual aspect of them, but it's the spiritual aspect that's cascading the physical effects that happen into the body. So absolutely.
And then you're gonna say something very important about all allegories when it comes to like astrology. It's not that they stole this allegory from this place or they change it. It's like people who understand energy and then work in it depending on their geographical location, because you gotta understand that each book works in a certain area because it was written this way for that geographical location. Like I'm pretty sure if the Quran started in a Western environment, it would have been like a whole different story. Or if the Bible started in Africa, it would have been like a whole different story. Like it's written in that specific energy. Like for example, in Western society, they're more Christian, so they deal with the New Testament where Jesus is more predominant. But where in the Eastern continent, they're not as focused as Jesus, but they appreciate Jesus, they respect Jesus. But there, they experience more spring and summer, so it's more hotter. So this is why heat, sunlight leads to illusions, so they don't want to experience a lot of that. This is why they have to remember other virtues and principles. This is why they tell Christians to remember the other prophets and shit like that. While in Christianity, it makes sense for them to worship Jesus, and I 100% support them to do missionary work in Western society, which is connected to colder areas, to play out as almost like blood circulation in some way, shape, or form for that society. Absolutely. And keep people in what believing in the Lord coming. Because it's more colder and distance in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard a guy, I forgot who it was. I think it was a military context he was talking about, but he called Christianity cargo missionaries in terms of, and he was describing how, like an American situation where during some war, or I forgot what it was, the Vietnam War or something like that, you know, South Vietnam is fighting against Northern Vietnam, and America has the interest of making them, you know, McDonald's people. So, so they, you know, started a war and blah 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 blah. But helping out the Southern fighting against the Northern people. So the Southern people, you know, Northern Vietnamese planting your rice with your hoe, with your fork, you know, Minecraft style. You live in Minecraft out there. Some niggas come through with some AK-47s. They come through with the scopes, the goggles, and all of that different type of shit. You're like, oh shit, these niggas it was Billy Carson. That's who it was. He was talking about Anunnakis and blah blah blah. He's like, oh, this is why we thought they were gone. But yeah, he was talking about something else and all that other shit. But what he was saying was true in terms of how those Vietnamese people deified those people because they came giving them fucking cans of tomatoes and all different type of shit. You know, they kept on bringing them shit. So, oh my God, you guys are coming here all high tech, have all this knowledge that we don't have, and you're giving us some shit from this source of abundance? I fuck with you. They have people flying the American flag over there now because of those type of experiences. Meanwhile, America set up. It was probably the people they were fighting against, so that was probably set up by the government. If you get what I mean, they set up the whole situation, but because of that aspect, that they were helped out and presented in a specific light, they entered deep. So yeah, that's how they were able to spread. Absolutely. And look at how Eastern people, being on the side where individuality is more strong, they're looking at the other energy, if you get what I mean, the more spiritual energy. That's where they're directed towards, where they're more comfortable with, you know, the individual life, food sovereignty, all the certain things. Protecting yourself, standing your ground. You don't have to explain this to someone from the fucking East. You don't have to explain these things.
It's
guy came into your house and you showed him, yeah. That's what happens. The bitch did what? She didn't make you dinner? Yeah, you should have. That's how it was. That's how it was.
You see it all the way to their religious practices, where Christianity is more like you're not forced to practice it. It's like you're allowed to believe or not to believe, and then you can only go to church like on Sunday and shit like that. Where in Muslim shit like that, you have to pray 5 times a day, and every Jews they pray three times a day, and every time they pray, they have to go to the washroom, wash themselves like 5 times a day, clean their hair, clean their hair, and it's like it's all physical. And now
you can't go to all
and not only
dirty,
that, dude, I'm telling you, like I did that shit. So you wash yourself and you say certain things, like everything is like oral tradition and shit like that. When you wash your hands and shit like that, you're saying things, and then after that you have to dress a certain way, and then all that is physical preparation backed up by what them focusing on certain mental energies. This is why a Muslim and a Jew, they really believe in what they're talking about. That belief, that mentality is grounded in their physicality, although we could see how it benefit their life. As where a Christian is more about you don't have to be as physical. It's more relied on metaphysical and understanding, which is I actually support 100% because they know how to not to get trapped in certain mentalities that the people in the Eastern continent would get trapped into. But that mentality they get trapped into has a purpose, like it's the way they do their life basically.
Absolutely. You can see that tradition, just like what you're saying, oral tradition is way more stuck there, which makes sense. When you're in a more individual energy, it makes sense that you can hold on to tradition and stuff like that. Whereas the West, where everything is so contingent with what's going on a collective scale, it's harder. That's why Christianity has morphed and changed into science now, and different shapes and forms of government. We think that the government right now isn't Christianity or isn't the church, but it's just a different iteration. It literally is those niggas. It literally, like, that's not even a conspiracy. It literally is. Follow the blood clot timeline and tell me when the revolution happened. Tell me when the church battled this group of people and overthrew the fucking church, and those are the people that's running. Show me when. Show me when. It just seems like niggas just transition into saying different things.
Yeah, 100%. If you, it's basically that. It is that. This is why you could track back. You could track all the British colonies, the United States, Canada, America, into Britain, and then Britain you can trace it back into the Roman Empire. And then if you could do like an astrology study behind that, you could see how it was all a transition all the way to the people who participated in this large form of rituals, who were like, you could say like Freemasons and shit like that. Like I'm pretty sure like Napoleon, certain popes, certain like generals, certain kings, George Washington, all type of people, Benjamin Franklin, all these people. Yeah,
absolutely. I bet you will see different correlations. And before Rome, it was Babylon. And before Babylon, who knows? God wiped all that shit before that shit out. Allegedly by the flood. All that sodomy and butt fucking that was going on.
But if you, like the flood right now, we are experiencing a flood right now with COVID-19. We're getting washed with all these new information, like the whole red pill nation, AI, crypto scams, firms, and so on and so forth. As you're already experiencing a flood, like your mother told you about it, like gas prices, like inflation, like you've been already struggling. Like we don't have to tell you about it. And if anything, God Ben told you to build the ark. If anything, it's been getting worse. Like it didn't get better, and it's getting worse.
Absolutely. I feel like God told me to build the ark mad long ago. He's like, get your animalistic natures together and build your spaceship to be able to ride the waves that are going on right now, aka. Get together your lower animalistic natures and have them float above your emotions. You get what I mean? Absolutely. So we're going through that flood right now. Absolutely. And this is why it's even more important for us to be able to take our power back. So just like how we were showing how, say people, Eastern people, how it's easier for them to catch on to certain mindsets, but yet you're still looking across at those other aspects, because just you naturally having certain talents, or certain attributes, certain tendencies, you automatically look at the direct opposite automatically, and you notice that as something that is as missing, if you get what I mean. You know, people who have more stability or whatever, you know, are aware of their lack of creativity, and that's going to play a whole theme in their life. And the people who are abundant in creativity are aware of their lack of stability. You know what I mean? They could create and innovate and do all of that, but you know, there's nothing sustaining for them. But then the sustained people, they don't know how to create, they don't know how to make something new, and stuff like that. So you're always looking kind of across like that, and that's the whole aspect of opposition and yin and yang. This is the third dimension that we're living in right now. So from a third dimensional perspective, because we're living the third dimensional perspective, when we're looking inside of the reality that we live in, you see two dimensions. You see polarity. You see yin and yang. I bet if we were to evolve our consciousness to start to perceive the higher realms of reality, the higher dimensions, from the 4D, you will look down and see 3D for what it really is, if you get what I mean. Just like how, or what is the fourth dimension is made out of, which is the third dimension aspects. And while the third dimension is made out of the second dimension, that's why duality is everywhere, down to male and female. Show me another goddamn thing. Like, I don't understand what people is talking about. Male and female, positive and negative, yin and yang is cosmic law. It's cosmic law. I don't know about this other shit niggas be talking about. They're getting lost in percentage levels and forgetting that it doesn't matter whatever manifestation is 99% yang. Now 1% yin is essential to the entire structure. It's essential to the entire structure, and you still need to incorporate those aspects.
And like, this is like where astrology could come in really in handy, helping you how to get out of your animalistic nature, so you could benefit yourself in the third dimension. And like CJ was saying, in the third dimension, like, we're here to really develop our mind and basically four-dimensional ability, our ability to give names, logic, and titles to things. And where we're giving names and titles to things in the third dimension, things that are around us and shit like that. This is where namings, this is what legal work, law is all about, naming things and taking power over these things with claiming the word. This is what they say in the Bible, the word with God, and the word was so important, and like literally to that point, and so on and so forth.
And that's their third dimensional way of replicating those higher dimensions, of tapping into those
so
dimensions.
Like right now with me and CJ, we're speaking about like four-dimensional things, like ideas, thoughts, ideas, but we have certain feelings about them. But now those thoughts and ideas and those lead us to feelings and emotions, a vibe about this idea, this title that we're in, and then this creates a mind that gives us a point of view on these thoughts, ideas, feelings, and emotion that we're going through, that the people in the third dimension that experience. So now from a sixth dimensional point of view, we could understand the mentalities in the fourth and fifth dimension, that the people getting trapped in the third dimension, because we're looking from a higher perspective, basically. But we're speaking right now as you see us in the third dimension with our physical shape or form. But you can't see what we're doing in the higher dimension, if you get what I'm saying. But we have to do it through speaking about it, or tradition, practice, physical work, and shit like that.
Absolutely. That's why it's so easy to get stuck in looking at the world in black and white, you know, into getting lost in the polarity and not understanding the higher natures that this polarity creates. 100%. 100%.
And this is why, like, it's so important too, because like you realize how they pull you deeper in the third dimension using certain foods, certain habits. They set traps for you within your space, but that those traps begin before you even got into your space. But because they attacked your parents, your ancestor, they came to your geographical location, so they came to your space before you get into that space. You don't know how you don't know how deep that is. And this is why the witchcraft is like, you could say like they build our organs and how our hormones and our blood flow and shit like that. Like, and you can't like hate against it. There's some deep shit, yo. Like they
directed evolution.
They done like real human like genetic manipulation.
That's the whole idea of eugenics. And this is not even like, it bothers me when I talk to people and, you know, they always try and put me in this conspiracy thing. It's like, yo, are y'all niggas retarded? Are you not looking at the world objectively for yourselves? There's more than enough examples of this going on. Eugenics was a known movement, large, and it's still going on now.
100%. And then you learn how they prepare the space in terms of using astrological witchcraft to set up certain like federation, government, divide the state in certain ways that correlate with the way the sun rise and shit like that. Like it gets really deep if you like watch Dolo and shit like that. It gets so, it's almost like they're building a physical circuit and like you're living through it, and then you think you're doing what you want to do, but you get so influenced by the physical world that you don't know what you're even doing. You're just going with the flow that your ancestor been programmed into since they entered that circuit, and you, since your mother bordered you from her womb, her space, and then you got hijacked by the government.
Dead ass. Your parents literally sold you out to the government from the jump. That's why you're born in sin, because they gave your ass a sin number.
And they gave you a name.
Absolutely. And it's your name. It's your name. How can you be what the name is if it's yours? If you own it?
This is what confuses a lot of people in law too, because people in law, they know how to operate separate from their name. They don't use their person. They use like trust, LLC, different corporate names, because they understand the power of the name, the power of the word, because they understand the law, their law, form of law, and their oral tradition. So they know how to write things down. This is why like they're very serious about the law, which is very actually respectable. And you know, if you know how to use the law, like if you know like people like Dr. Ali Muhammad, like you can get very amazing result, because he speaks about like reaching sovereignty with the group, which is very like something agreeable, versus like other people I was studying in the United States, they want to reach sovereignty by themselves, which
by them goddamn
it didn't work.
selves.
You can see how Dr. Ali Muhammad approach was more correlated to Western society, which you can see how Mason be like, yo, we can allow this guy, yo. It's based on like game teaching game, shit like that.
Absolutely. And this is why why you need to check all 12 boxes. You need all areas, because you could be right, and you absolutely are right in so much aspects. This is where people get lost too. I'll tell you, Age of Aquarius, niggas hold on to being right so heavy, and they are right, but there's more to be right about, which pisses me off. But like with the sovereign niggas, you're looking at such an individual aspect, and you may be right. You maybe do need these things, and maybe they should play out in a certain way. But that doesn't mean that your partners, that everybody else in the world won't come and affect that. Niggas talking about sovereignty, this, that, and the third. FBI with their by themselves. FBI with the most coordinated teamwork you've ever seen in your goddamn life. I'm gonna put a bullet in you and all of this. But you're talking about individuality and sovereignty, and I can do this by myself. Talking on an iPhone that was made by slaves. Talking on everything that was made by other fucking people. I don't understand. I don't understand.
And this is where you gotta have to be very careful, and like certain witchcraft they plant ahead of time, like shit like conscious community and shit like that. Me and CJ been through the conscious community, and I watched so much video. Like I would never hate on a conscious community. It was one of the most entertaining Luciferian environment I've ever been in my entire life. Like that.
It's a stepping stone. It was definitely required.
That was to go through that. Like going through the fourth and the fifth dimension against me, understand different thoughts, ideas, names, title, Allah, Muhammad, Jesus, what these mean, the logical aspect, and it was the feelings and emotion behind these things. And this led me to a higher point of view and shit like that, all the way to like you could say the subconscious community. But I benefited from my experience of getting lost in the light, in the information, so I could get to a place where there's less information, where I'm more in a pure, clear space. So now I could know how to correlate the information, the light, much more better. Basically, like that's what Dolo talks about. Like to control the darkness, you gotta control the light, because the darkness is the accumulation of the light. And like this manifests physically.
That's
This is
the
what the
world we
body
live in.
is the accumulation of all that darkness. And even if you use your awareness in a way where you're accumulating heavy, you can get like a headache or shit like that, like in different ways. Like it happens in different ways depending on your natal alignment and shit like that, how you got programmed, all type of shit. Like you got like we all been
Oh,
programmed. I've been programmed. You've been programmed. Your grandma been programmed. Like, but we're aware enough to what to speak about it. That's like what subconsciousness is, as opposed to get lost in like consciousness, like the light and shit like that. The after effect. We want to talk about that behind the scene.
and started to add your own
Yeah,
code.
basically. Yeah. You could intercept the signal, basically.
100.
Yeah. This is what even they talk about in the Bible and like the birth of Jesus. When you know how to do the right, correct, like a royal birth and shit like that, the right man, right masculine, right feminine, they could even come in. They could correlate the right energies to give birth to like a son of God, basically.
That's what they did with Alexander the Great. People don't understand how ancient astrologers were. There was an astrologer, obviously heavy advisors of all royal families and empires and regimes. How are you going to do these large expeditions and not include fucking astrology? But when Alexander the Great's mother was pregnant, the astrologer told her, like, shorty, hold him in for 2 more hours. Hold him in for a little bit more, and we'll have a conqueror. We'll have he'll have a great chart, and he'll be a very influential person. And then look at what happened. Look at all what Dr. Ali's talk about with the planned
Childbirth.
parents.
All the way to the point that the family, the people, the man and the woman gotta prepare themselves to welcome their child. All the way to the point, like, if you understand the female body, I understand Cancer, the fourth house, it deals with like the lymphatic system, but the womb, the home for the child, but like that kind of sextile Virgo, the digestive system. So we're gonna make sure the female start to eat properly. We're gonna prepare her digestive system, good bacteria, bad bacteria, because all they gotta influence the womb, and so on and so forth. So it gets really deep. All the way, like I recommend you guys to study how royal family like raise their kids. They raise them in a separate places with other royal kids, not broke ass kids. So they develop useless mentalities about
No
getting
brokies.
drunk. They separate their kids to hang out with other royal kids from a higher position. Like, that makes so much sense. A broke person would not understand that. He would just say that, like, he would put like a name to it, like, they're against us, like, or some shit like that. But it's not even that. It's about like them allowing their space to be completely clean. Like, these kids, they teach them like 6 languages and shit like that. They allow them to travel the world.
Yeah,
their
from the beginning.
education system is completely different. They're trained to rule as kings and shit like that. And you look at things from like a sheep mentality, including ourselves too. But like, if you could look things from their perspective, you can see how things make so much sense, and how how back then the royal families are the first people to start mixing with other races, not people doing it, if you really think about it, because the royal people are the real people. Like, if we mix our blood with a different geographical location, what type of result, what type of light we could produce.
Sets the precedent. That's how you join alliances. That's how alliances were made. You know, that's how you join families and shit like that. 100%.
Like a person from a low environment wouldn't get to the point that he would travel outside his city to meet other people, to go even through the mental clash and the possible fighting and the backstabbing, to the point that we might expand our mind. So you and from that point, royal people started doing it. Sheeps, like, or people in lower levels, started practicing it, but they're not doing it in the way that the royal family is doing it, based on like elevating the mentality by mixing 2 different mentalities. If you kind of get my train of thought, because the way we do a lot of things in our daily life is really us trying to copy them, but in a very bad way, adding our 100-word interpretation from my grandparents and different Protestants churches and all type of stuff.
Absolutely. This is why we're all Masons, but we're bad. We're terrible Masons.
This is why they look at us like garbage, yo, and like I 100% agree with them. Cause like you want to argue with the people who rule the world, but like you wouldn't even spend the time to rule your own self. Like, imagine can you even sustain a routine and a pattern, like a habit? Can you run a habit controlling like the world, the government and shit like that? they got to the position they are in because they have something inside of them that actually correspond to the position outside of them. It's as above so below, as without so within, and your current position actually explain where you are in your current space. And there's no,
and that's how they maintain
and there's
those
no
positions.
out of it, because we can look at all the shapes and forms that you're around you, that you manifested, and we can see where your mentality is heading, whether you're happy, you're depressed, and so on and so forth.
That's how the whole concept of being a chosen person comes out about. It makes sense for them to come to certain conclusions based off of looking and be like, hey, well, I'm in this position of power. Hey, maybe God, and to a degree, they right. God, how else did you get into that fucking position?
And
if you get what I mean. Understanding God as all possibilities and the creative energy that makes the world, it happened. So God must have done it. Because it happened.
And then you understand some deep stuff and shit like that. You understand like we like put more importance in Jesus, like expressing the truth, bringing the light to the world, and so on and so forth. But like when you look at how it plays out in the world, it's almost like in like cooperation companies and stuff like that. They have the people that perform in the stage, the employees, or the people who represent the main brand, the spokesperson and shit like that. But these people are usually get paid the least compared to the people who run like the company, or run like say the management and things like that. This is like, you could say, fifth house opposition with the 11th house, and then from there you could see how things could get crazy, because the story they preach to you, it becomes a place that they do the opposite of it. They don't want to be Jesus. They want to be the people in the 11th house running the group and telling you could be Jesus, you could perform on the stage, and we get paid off. Look at all the rappers, all the people they perform. What happens to them? They all hate the fact they even joined the music industry, to the point that they're even related to the devil. What's after Leo, the 5th house? After they go through work, fruit and harvest, Virgo, they have Libra, right? And then from there, Libra, we go to Scorpio, death. This is where they experience all their downfall. And I bet this, so like all the rappers, they go through that all of it all the time.
The reality of their contracts, how they got their money stolen from them, all the things that they didn't see.
And
then
they look at, and they're hitting on the position of the people, like let's say the Jews, the people in the 11th house, Aquarius, the 10th house, Capricorn, and how strong they are, but they could see how they are the people who getting the body or the system of that machine to work, since they're the Leo, the 5th house, the heart pumps the blood, the heart starts the show, it brings faith, it makes people believe, and people wouldn't want to believe in like Aquarius and Capricorn, but like in Jesus, they would definitely want to do that.
Absolutely. And once again, adding the character, the anthropomorphizing the mythology behind the archetype energy, saying Mars, Saturn with key words, you don't understand it, but Jesus Christ dying on the cross, you know what I mean? I just said Aries to Scorpio. Basically, the story goes further than that, but I basically talk about Aries to Sagittarius season, just within those that aspect, just within those words.
Or Jesus was against the government, Leo the 5th house in conjunct Capricorn the 10th house, or Jesus loved his disciples in the New Testament, like all the fixed houses and so on and so forth. It's all really words that correspond with energies, and if you can understand what words in the Bible correlate with these energies, it makes understand the Bible way more easier. You understand why Abraham went east. You understand why there's a flaming bush. You understand why there is a river. You understand why there's an ark. You understand why we build mountains. All the way to the point it plays out in the 3rd dimension as building companies, corporation. Like look at how companies look like. They build high, like the Tower of Babel. Like they do that in their real life, yo. Look at the people in the United States. Look at Dubai and shit like that. Yeah, you don't think that's the Tower of Babel? Them building corporation and with their oral tradition, and then building all that practicality.
Absolutely, 100%. But you can even see like how you're talking about, the royal people and people in the higher positions, how, and then the people, the citizens, the average people, how even at that discrepancy, because of that distance, there's no way for someone from that higher power, from those higher things, when they built those systems and set them in place, for them to start those same structures again themselves. Never, if they ever fell down from that height and got into your position, they would never be able to touch that again. And this is what I mean about where we become so focused on the energy of where we are. And it's the same thing with us. We get so stuck in our, sheep mind, peasant mindsets, and get so lost in that. We have the ability to be the self-starters, to be the initiating factors that builds the next system. If you get what I mean. And that's how you create balance.
This is why Andrew Tate calls us brokies, and like he's right. And like the energy he brings that vision that everybody want to be part of. And then you can't be mad about like Andrew Tate and shit like that in the third dimension, because if you understand, he's a Sagittarius. Everything he does literally is so Sagittarius. The cars, the girls, everything. The way he
the Islam, the religion. He said, "I'm a man of God." If that ain't sad. If that is sad,
like, and he's all about his belief and so on. Kanye West, a Gemini with a Pisces, you'll never get mad at people. You actually appreciate them. And then, if anything, I would love to invite them and tell them like about themselves. I'll be like, nah, that was a Sag move. Nah, that was a Pisces move and shit like that. But
imagine if they knew.
And not even that, they even talk about it. Like I remember Kanye West in his interview, he talked about he mentioned the term Libra to a female before, but like
yeah, he likes Libras. He likes Libras. Kim was a Libra.
Like we don't understand. Like I'm saying, like what I'm saying with the royal family and how the royal family set up certain position for people to climb up the ladder, aka Mason, 33 degrees, celebrities getting allowed in a certain position if they perform certain things or they're willing to do certain things. So you could see it maybe in Kanye West. We don't understand. To be honest, I don't believe he either completely flunked out or he does things on purpose and he does not allow us to know everything he's actually doing. Because like there's no way he would speak about Libra and he speaks about the Bible about in once like he speaks about everything in a very disorganized way, which I understand. But at the same time, to get into his position, you can't be dumb. You gotta like have put in the work and shit like that, all the way to him like solidifying his position, whether you wanna agree with it or not. But he has all that like the physical accumulation of it. So like you can't argue against it.
Absolutely. You can only have a better understanding of it. And this is what we do. We argue and debate and go against all of these things instead of trying to understand them. And this is where astrology would get you. Because if he had the understanding and if everybody else had the understanding, if you have Kanye on your show and you know he's a Gemini, he said this, he said I love Hitler or whatever. It's like, nigga, if anybody was to say that, it would have been the fucking Gemini.
And like,
if anybody were to say that, so why people react? This, that, the third. He's a Gemini. Like I don't understand where that knowledge gets lost. And look at how everybody would move better. He would move better with that level of understanding and being a Pisces moon too. That's why it sounds all over the place. But look at how the opportunity for us to learn about Gemini being present and how Gemini can incorporate in the negative aspects of Gemini, aka the mind, aka you can't just say every thought that comes to your mind necessarily, but we see the energy of him starting conversations, the energy of communication, and how that manifests. Absolutely. And how you said how things may be going on behind the closed doors. His moon is in Pisces.
Yeah. It's
so naturally we don't know the influences and the energies that's making him emotionally respond.
Sometimes I
believe
with the moon Pisces, in some way he's guided by the divine in a flunked way, and
100%. But 100%. Drunken
all I can
prophet.
say, Kanye West is the one of the most world interesting spirits, and when he dies, he will ascend from this flesh high, and like everybody will speak about it. There's no way.
He's going to heaven, bro.
There's no way, because like this.
God's like, mine, nigga.
He wants to see his mom, yo. He doesn't give a fuck, yo. He doesn't give a care about the shadow government, the Jews, nothing, yo.
100%. And then look at how, and this is what we mean where you can take power control back. And these guys, celebrities being those aspects. And then remember, this is what the tactics that they've always been using. They represent the archetypes. You could look at celebrities as the major arcana in tarot, and just your basic archetypes. That's what sets you above all of these things. They don't like people expressing the full range of the dynamic aspects of what it is to be human, because then you start thinking that you're a dynamic person and you start taking all of these different attributes, and maybe you need the government and institutions a little bit less. But if you focus on being one archetype, mastering one energy, we already know what the hell you're gonna do. We know everything that you're gonna do, because we created this archetype. And celebrities play those aspects out. That's why we call them stars. And
we call them
people
like
like
we call
that.
them like celebrities, celebrate like those celebrated blood cells. Cause like when our organ, and they choose certain people or represent certain blood cells, they could get this organ, this system moving in a certain way through programming it and shit like that, through controlling it. Through controlling us, so we're gonna move this organ. You'll be surprised on how one spirit is able to control a space, which is basically a body and organ, and how actually dependent that space on it, all the way to the point that leads to like royal families and shit like that. To the point that we even ourselves, we may not understand it, since we may or may not be a part of a royal family, so like we don't know and shit like that. So you don't know how deep it gets and what type of system they set up in place if they ever lost their position. Like it gets very deep.
It does get very deep, 100%, because that is humanity. So we can't get stuck playing out these particular archetypes. We have to really unlock the multifaceted nature of us so you can understand the world. People don't understand people like Kanye, people like Andrew Tate, because they're shutting down the Gemini within them. They're shutting down the Sagittarius in them. And that's what we're about to go into as we go throughout all the houses. These are all within you. There's nothing. Well, there's minor differences, but the building blocks that make up you is the exact same that's within everybody. So within everybody's experiences, you can learn. Everybody is wasting so much of their time, wasting so much of their potential to learn by separating themselves from everybody. The negative people, the villains in your life, are teaching you the most about yourself. But you keep on trying to write off everybody. You keep on trying to say this person's wrong, this person's right, this person, you're flunked out and you ain't in the true space. You ain't in the true space saying that type of shit. Because and people be like, oh, I don't understand. People like, oh, Hitler's evil. Hitler's this, that, and the third. I'm with Kanye. You gotta love everybody. And Hitler is not a bad person. You are Hitler. I'm Hitler. Everybody is fucking Hitler. Don't tell me if you never went through the exact same situations and environment and circumstances that motherfucker went to, you wouldn't have come to the same conclusion and circumstances. And most niggas don't even know the circumstances that they went under. Germany was fucked at the time from Jewish bankers. So whether it was right or not, the circumstances and environment, it was there. It was there. And you keep on neglecting that. You know what that creates? The possibility for you to be the next Hitler, because you keep on suppressing it and you don't want to understand the energy of where that came from, multifaceted. Oh, that's not me. Oh, that's not me. I'm not Hitler. I'm not that evil. Some guy's saying the exact. That's what's happening right now. They're talking about, oh, cancel this guy. Oh, don't listen to. Oh, these guys are bad. Oh, be a part of our group and all that. That is the exact same thing. It is the exact same thing. Look how people look at Trump supporters. People really think in their mind that 75 million people in America who voted for him are retarded. You think a country can run with 75 million retarded people who can't think for themselves? Like, stuff like that is it blows me away. But it comes from this separated aspect for us not understanding that we are the entire wheel. And when you check all of those boxes, you stop being influenced by the world. We're focusing so much energy to so much parts. We probably have stelliums. We probably have oppositions. And we never really dive into the multifaceted aspect that we all are. That's why me and Harris could talk about anybody in the world. And we can see that in ourselves because we understand the language of astrology.
Yeah.
And we understand the building blocks and the space and environment that can build that energy. And it's Pisces. Pisces will, or whatever sign. It can manifest in any different way, but because we understand Pisces, the underlying, we understand the building blocks, so it gives us a whole level of understanding down to whoever we interact with. Whoever we interact with is only going to teach us more about ourselves. Yet you go through you every day. Oh, I don't like this person. Oh, this person said this to me. Look at all these people getting mad at people saying shit to them.
Yeah.
And not utilizing it. Getting mad at it. And not utilizing it. But yeah, we're about to teach you how to take your power back by going through all of these going through all these houses.
And these houses are basically the energies in the skies of the higher dimension, and they basically create shapes and forms to play out these energies here. And as long as they can play out 12 sectors, or like, because I'm Dr. Ali Muhammad speaks about, if you want to create a government, you need to have at least 12 a ministry, which is very interesting. Because I was studying some things like in the East, and how they have the same things. I used to live in the United Arab Emirates, and the way they structured the cities there, the country has 7 main cities, like this, like 7 main planets, and each city is ruled by a principal, and each city is allowed to do its own thing and not rely on the other person. This is why they have basically
in a country.
This is why you might hear like Saudi Arabia have some issues with Qatar and shit like that, because they have such a high level of individuality. They're all selling oil and shit like that, but they compete against themselves selling oil and shit like that. All the point they want to charge themselves on like buying lavish things and shit like that. But
it's one solar system, but you have different planets and different aspects going around. Sometimes they trine each other, sometimes they square each other, sometimes they oppose each other and stuff like that. Absolutely, but it creates better flow. Absolutely. Meanwhile, it could be, if without that system, without that setup, it's all a big jumble mush where there's trines, sextiles, oppositions. You can't make sense out of any of it.
This is this is one of the things. Also, the British done when they went and colonized everybody. They went and colonized everybody and gave people almost like the education system, the way they want people to basically think about the world and shit like that. So it plays out because a lot of people we're the descendant of their thought forms basically. And a lot of people, all the way to certain things relate to Egyptology, all the material is written by British people from Britain. It's not as bad as not, but there's something you gotta pay attention to. When someone write about something, he's writing his own interpretation from his own point of view, and he has his own influences writing about these things. So sometimes we gotta question what he's even writing, which is very important before you even read what this person is writing. Basically, before you write the symbol, you understand why person just wanted to make the symbol. This is very important.
It's so deep. It's deep. Especially
because they in it basically through history and education, they in it direct our awareness and shit like that. This is they done with history or all the way. They basically you might get lost in arguments related to Africa, but if you don't understand that Africa is related to the Eastern continent and how they want to blind you through going to the first house and getting lost in the sun exaltation, how things appear giving birth to patriarchal concept, masculine concept, but it's really backed up by the feminine energy. All the way you may learn about Vedic astrology, where it's more woman worship, but it looks masculine, but it's really feminine, and so on and so forth.
That's the foundation behind all of it. Absolutely. Even me just being in here, being in the suburbs, being in the white suburbs, being the hood nigga that I am, bro, they really don't understand certain things. Even me just talking about astrology. Even me talking about ancient history, ancient Native Americans. They don't understand the colonizer mind that they have, the pure racism that they have, down to astrology. Okay, so astrology is not real. It's pseudo, right? Because we're all supposed to get money and blah 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 blah. You understand because you're able to afford to go to school and know all of this shit. So you're more knowledgeable than everybody.
And you start asking a question about, okay, do you celebrate your birthday? Do you celebrate holy days, and like we start asking question about, okay, what energies do these holidays they put you in, and why do you feel that way in that certain time at that at certain place, and so on and so forth. And then you can argue against astrology, because astrology teach you about time, and then everything you do is correlated towards time. You wake up at a certain time to do what? To go to work. Correlated towards time, you go to work. There's lunch, there's a break. It's all related to time, all the way to the way your organs function. Time, all the way to the point that you might get married. The time, that where you do everything, like it gets very like intricate. Like this is where if you study you get study astrology, you learn about like I think they call it like horary astrology, where you basically try to set up event based on astrology, based on like the ascendant and the rulership of the ascendant, and how it connects to the moon, and so on and so forth. Like they like
Yeah, I think horror is where you ask a question and then they cast the chart of that moment in time to find the answer.
Or I think election astrology. Yeah, both of them too. Both of them actually very interesting.
Yeah, and mundane is like events and stuff like that.
But like as we're speaking right now, we're kind of speaking about it in a divided way, which we should be aware of, since they taught it this way, and probably the ancient people, they may teach it this way, like mundane, electional, and shit like that. Because like I could I could naturally tell you could understand electional, mundane, and different type of astrology through just the regular system. It's just they reorientated the original system towards this like system, if you get what I'm saying. Like all the way to the point you could create like a health plan based on like your natal alignment and shit like that.
Anything that you're looking at in the world follows by these rules, but takes shape and form different ways. Pisces takes shape and form different ways. It could be the subconscious mind, or it could be your blood clot skin. It takes shape and form in multiple different ways. Absolutely. But look at the mentalities that people have when we talk about, especially the ancients and historically. It blows my mind that people can think that a system like astrology can last for thousands of years, and it's not based in, it's not their lack of information on it, it's that it's invalid. Same thing with Christianity. When you talk to this is what I mean when you talk so much self-entitlement in the hood. We don't have that. I swear to God, I miss the hood so much, bro. I miss LA so much. There's not that sense of entitlement. There's not that. If niggas don't know, they don't know. Niggas just didn't want to talk to me about the spirituality. that's all it was. Niggas just didn't want to do it. You know, they were gonna start debating me about telling me how I'm wrong about certain things and all that different stuff. Niggas don't know, and niggas aren't trying to pretend to know. But yet, on the other side, you know, it's so much self-entitlement to the point where they'll start saying that my ancestors who designed civilizations based off of astrology was all flunked out, and that they didn't know what they were doing. How can astrology last for as long as it did? You know, a clairvoyant by the name of Barbara Brennan, fucking love her. She set the groundwork for the whole understanding of that realm of reality, of clairvoyancy and psychic reading and how that's all perceived, kind of breaking it down into systems. And she, in her practice when healing people, you know, because people, especially when you're in the spiritual business, niggas will be come to you, oh, I'm a Pleiadian, I'm a star seed, and, you know, niggas will come to you all different type of shit, you know what I mean? She had the perspective of, I don't ask if it's real, I ask if it's useful. And that blew my mind away. People getting hung up on asking whether astrology is real or not, whether certain things are real or not. Is it useful? Is it useful? Then it doesn't matter if there's an invisible force moving the planets that affects you on a biological. You don't have to understand that. Nobody ever said that you have to understand what's going on. I don't know where God said, whisper to your ear when you were born and said, nigga, you have to understand this shit. to a T,
This
my
this is
nigga.
why I don't like really science. Since a lot of science theory is more really masculine energy. It's more just really metaphysical, where you can't ground it to your reality. You can't benefit from it. Like people here would talk about quantum physics, but like how would you real quantum physics to someone like daily life and shit like that?
I get what you mean, but that's
Like
that's specific.
yeah, that's specifically
people.
like we actually could do it right now, like quantum physics and shit like that, or like how light bends and so on and so forth. But like a lot of people in like science community, they don't relate a lot of ideas to people's daily life. This is why the idea does not stick. If you get what I'm saying, this is why it's always changeable.
Astronomy. That's what astronomy is. Who gives a fuck how far the thing is? Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck where the
Yeah.
stars are? What does that have to do with anything? How it influences you? That's where it matters. Who gives a fuck where the shit is?
Yeah.
And yet astronomy seems more legit than astrology. I've never understood. Never understood.
This is why actually I think like females get connected to astrology way more quicker than men. It's easy to convince female with astrology than men. Man, they be bringing ego and shit like that. It would be hard to get them into astrology because they viewed as feminine. Obviously, this is why it's easier. Obviously, for females and things like that.
But that's wrong. I feel astrology, just like what you're saying with science, it's been used in a masculine aspect, but science, just like astrology, is very balanced. How it's structured, the scientific method, experimental plus mathematical evidence. Your mathematical evidence that works good on paper has to correlate with the experimental evidence for it to be considered scientific fact. The negative feminine principle has to correlate with the masculine principle. And that's exactly the same thing what astrology is doing, where it's putting a structure, masculine, to the spatial elemental energies that run on life, the feminine, and balancing them. I keep on thinking, whenever I think of astrology, I think of the feathered serpent. That literally comes to my mind. I'm thinking like some wings coming out of my head, you know, start flying. But that's literally what it is, where you're balanced now, where you can't fly without balance. If you miss one feather on one wing, you know, you're gonna start tumbling down on some real shit. So this stuff is real. And it's powerful, and we can't even go on like what you're saying. I could explain quantum physics and how it corresponds with astrology and all of these aspects, or you can use it to get lost and talk about irrelevant and separatism, or not realize that you're talking about the same thing that ancients have been talking about for thousands of fucking
I was
years.
speaking to this.
Yeah,
I was speaking to one of my buddies. He's like, I think he's an Aquarius. That's my prediction because he looks like an Aquarius and he thinks like Aquarius. He's like very logical and very fixated on that. So I started speaking to him about science and how we started speaking about the particles and shit like that, protons, electron, neutron, and shit like that. And then I started adding like speculative quality to the science theory by stating that it's basically is electron negative and it's proton positive, because they would play out in a third dimension as males being protons and then females being like electrons, since it's a negative charge. But then him being an Aquarius did not want to connect the two on how electron could actually be negative, like in the sense of like being actually negative, or proton can actually have the quality of being positive, and how he tried to explain to me how that theory had nothing to do with what I'm talking about, or how you can relate to the third dimension,
which is crazy, because you go and draw it, a science, they'll show you an electron, draw it as a negative sign. I don't know what niggas is talking about, bro. And the proton will be represented by a positive sign, and this nigga's trying to tell you how that's not real, when the nigga he's talking about, look at it the way that you're talking about. And they come up with
arguments that they argue for it, but at the same time they won't argue for it. It's almost like they give you all this information and at the end they tell you they don't know, and it becomes like very this is where maybe the people in the eastern continent would be like, all that type of shit is useless, where they might just stick to their like older tradition, where people in the west, they may maybe look down upon that, but
they'll comment and react and doing all of that,
so on, so
and the east will
but
Or just beat your ass down.
Yeah,
Shut
but
your ass up.
people in the East actually miss out in like the new shit and shit like that, because you might think people in the East are more connected, say, to spring season, like Aries, the first house, which you think is the beginning of things. But then if you understand where people in the Western society are more connected to where the fall season is, and if the fall season is connected to where the winter season is, where they call this the peace deal calls it the celestial realm, where all the generational like planet are, and if that area geographical location is connected very close to that area, that means what like new shit will land there first and then get to the east. As opposed to the other way around. This is what they teach it. They teach us in Africa, then America. If you get into like Graham Hancock, which is one of the people right now, which I think one of the Freemasons they're gonna use as the headquarters, who's gonna speak about like America and shit like that. But they took you from east to west. But if you can understand, it kind of went west and then east and then they brought it back, then you won't get confused.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And isn't this what they did with these ideologies? Dolo talks about all the time how this Bible is some it's Eastern mysticism. When you even look at Christianity, that's very true. They're always bringing it. Jesus was a bumbleclap Buddhist. Baptism is a Buddhist tradition. It's so much of the things he did. The Apostle Paul shaved his head and took an oath like a fucking monk, like a fucking Buddhist monk. Which is crazy. I swear in the Circle 7 they talk about that too. Jesus going to Tibet or something like that, and him going to India. But showing those influences and how they took those Eastern mentalities and brought it to the West.
And then like gonna teach you how to like separate but also combine, and you're gonna see how they're gonna use both sides, and like how they don't get lost. And like I'm talking about the shadow government, they don't get lost in either Western or Vedic. Because the way they use stars in a whole different way. You might think exaltation are like good, but like maybe in third dimension they play out as debilitation, where debilitation play out better than exaltation in the third dimension, since they provide these opportunity. And they because they make everything in reverse. So like you should start thinking in reverse too, and like use that as a starting point. I have to think beyond that, because it's which is
absolutely America being the new world, really the old world. Everything's reversed. At 100%, and that's how you get people, or you. And I see that with astrology and these virtues too. Look at what they're doing with Venus, through pornography, through everything, through food, through everything. Not only are they hijacking your hormonal system and using the negative aspects of your hormonal system, aka making you everything out of balance, make your hormones do the things that it's not supposed to be doing. They take the inverted version of Venus. That's literally what the pentagram is. It's a upside down 5-pointed star representing the inverted energy of Venus. So you're right in terms of everything is in reverse, because this is how they present the energy for us. So we think that that's the norm.
And like it's more powerful, like Venus rule Libra, shit like that. If you read the Bible, they tell you like Lucifer is the prince of the air. Like if you don't talk about Libra, you say Libra connected to the lying energy. Like it's very easier for you to utilize Venus energy and reverse it in those houses that relate to Venus, like the second house is ruled by Venus, and then the seventh house is ruled by Venus, and then it's exalted in the 12th house. So you could imagine how you could reverse things in the 12th house and bring certain dreams and illusions and indulgence like down to like a third dimension and like shit like that.
I can say that Taurus, Libra, and Pisces probably get into the most toxic relationships. I can see that. I can so see that, or be so influenced by that negative
my younger
Venus.
brother's a moon Pisces, I think Sun Taurus. Like I was so worried for him. Like my after younger brother that is moon Pisces. Man, that shit is fucked up, yo.
Yeah. My son's a Pisces stellium, 100%. And that shit's real. That shit's real, 100%. But yeah, let's go into the houses and break down how you can take your power back. By checking all of these boxes, then you can start living holistically. Then you can start understanding how the world is attacking you and influencing you on a higher level, starting with the first house. You know, which is interesting. I was reading today that when babies are developing in a mother's womb, the baby chooses when they are born. If you get what I mean. through their own, when their metabolic system develops to a certain point in the mom's body, they start releasing adrenaline into the mother's bloodstream to cascade the birthing process. So they started. So look at the first house and the self-starting aspects. You know,
it squares what the fourth house,
birth.
The mother. So you see the difficulty, the birth of that child that it brings, and why it hurts. This is why Aries is ruled by Mars, and they say like Mars is like inflammatory, it burns and shit like that. It's hot. Like I just imagine a childbirth, like it's definitely hot there.
Well, yeah, you coming out the coochie. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it happened quick too. I delivered my son. I was literally there, me doing it. And when I tell you this nigga shot out of there, it was so fast. If that was Aries, if that representative of the beginning of the life, I swear that nigga just shot out that motherfucker. I was like, damn, that was quick.
Delivering like a kid in like a winter storm, like a very cold area. Well, like you got no choice. It probably would have been like a harder.
Yeah, his head pops out. It's like slow. Yeah.
It would probably way more scarier too. Yeah.
But yeah, that Aries energy is very self-starting, and this is that moment of when you coming out defines everything. That's when your chart's casted, and it defines how you interact with the world. Look at how your astrology and your natal charts denoting your personality and your behavior for the rest of your life. Your first house is talking about your personality, who you are. And if you don't associate who you are with your starting point, you're lost. You're lost. That's why there's a Mos Def line. Forgot it, but in Thief of the Night, he's like, most people who hate God or look down on God or something like that, but they just can't accept their parents as their starting point. Which is so true. You're looking for some higher power. What do they say in the Bible? You're looking for something. You came out of a coochie, bro. This is why the Bible's all about is
respect the father. Don't forget the father, which represents the first further point. At least that direction in your bloodline that you should look forward to see as a direction, whether you want to go towards to or you want to go the opposite direction. And understand your mother, which probably represent your like she represents a form of your insecurity that you have. Really represent a part of your feminine energy. The more like all the way to the point that people will not grow up with their mother, they may have a solid connection with them. So they might apply a certain energy. They're looking for feminine energy in the third dimension. Or females, they didn't grow up with their father. They start looking for certain masculine shape of forms in the third dimension to fulfill those energies, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely, 100%. And getting this area under control, under your power, it's by understanding who you are, by understanding your starting point. Like, we don't realize, just even me learning more about trauma and how the birthing process and so much of the things that happens when you are a baby determines your defense mechanisms, determines your hormones and your biological chemistry and all of that. If you're not breastfed as a baby, you literally have a different gut biome by somebody who was breastfed throughout, the time, throughout them being coming out of the body. So there's so much different things that have happened. So much people put two and two together once you have your starting point. So how you take control is your starting point. How do you present yourself into the world? What is your starting point, and how does that define who you are? And it doesn't necessarily have to be your birth, but it's that starting point where you separate from everybody else. Where is that starting point where you start to differ from everybody else, where you start to experience an individual space that is separate from everybody else, and start to really understand that, hone that, and develop that? Most people don't have that starting point. Look what we're talking about. We're Western people, looking at more of the collective energies. So we wouldn't even be looking at starting points. We don't look at starting points at all. We don't even have a cosmology. They told us we come from monkeys. Where do monkeys come from? I don't know. Oh, it's a Big Bang. I don't know what's happening before that. Like, it's weak ass starting points. Y'all just explaining how you don't know.
Yeah. That's why I felt more like when I came to Western society, I felt more appreciated by, instead of having that point of view, I'm like, we came from God, Garden Eden. Even though it's so flunked out, that I was more like solidified in the West, where I was not shaken with all the different, because they use words in a very how can I describe it? Not in a jargon way, where it's in a jargon way. It's unnecessary. A lot of filler words. Where in the Eastern continent, when you study things like maybe Kemet, Egypt, and shit like that, they write things without vowels, and then you start to understand that back then we didn't need to speak as much if we knew what virtues and principles that we're practicing through our body. So like you could see how in the West that ability to speak is just being liberal, the ability just to which is not bad at all, because it's the beginning of everybody creating relationships, which is the I think the most powerful thing that the West have. But it's sometimes just words that is not like anchored down in reality.
Absolutely. And look at how a relationship is completely integral and starting on a starting point, and the individuals knowing who they are. If you don't understand who you are as an individual, how are you going to blend your energies with someone else? When do you stop giving? When do you stop taking? You don't even know. So you diving into your selfish energies and practicing when it's okay to be selfish and when it's not okay to be selfish, and playing with that spectrum. This is not, again, none of these houses are going to be easy to understand, and that's why you're fucking alive here to figure all of that stuff out and to live through these experiences. You've done it already. You've done it before, multiple times, and this is why you have a certain focus in certain areas, because that's what was concentrating based off of those past lifetimes. But you understanding when it's okay to be selfish and where to be selfish is how you take control back from your first house. How to be an individual and what that means for you. People, and this is the difference between astrology and psychology. People don't understand. I swear to God, it bothers me. People would prop up niggas like Jung, and which is not saying that they didn't do amazing work and understanding, but they're so locked in. Freud, they're so locked into the model and system of the world that they had developed, assuming that it hits everybody that same way, forgetting the subjective aspects that is involved within the mind, the dynamic aspect. Thinking that you can develop a system that doesn't incorporate the subjective is completely lost. And that's why Jung had to separate from Freud and that psychology and started talking about the subconscious mind a little bit more. It's funny. Freud, when he was near his deathbed, wrote in a letter to a friend that he wished, instead of focusing on psychoanalysis, he started focusing on psychic development.
The dude who read Sigmund Freud. Or the dude who made the book, the Red Book, or that book, what was it called? Carl Jung. Carl Jung was a 3-degree Leo, so like he was like a Mason and shit like that. All these people like Mason, Jesuits and shit like that.
That's my ascendant, bro. That's crazy.
Oh, really? Oh, holy shit! That's crazy. But like they set up people like that, and like when people like, especially when people like study like subjects and like schools and shit like that, you gotta study the principles of the people who built these schools, like the education system and shit like that, like Harvard. Like all of them, you get highly actually interested in the background of like why they came up with this university or shit like that.
Absolutely. And a lot of it is based off of other people's interpretations of things. It's not set up to be open. So a lot of the psychological aspects and ideas of individuality, you may be operating based off of someone else's idea of individuality, and then it correlates with the opposing house, the 7th house, and how you blend your energies with other people starts determining, how you view yourself and how you present yourself and what you're personally interested into, and how that can alter and change it the most. So to understand and take power back of your first house, you have to be selfish, and you have to weigh that scale to learn when it's okay and when it's not to be okay, so you can understand your own individuality and what your own individual needs
This is
are.
why the God of the Old Testament was selfish, angry.
Oh,
You know why? Because
oh,
like it takes a lot
oh.
of hate and anger to look at this system, the 10th house, the bone structure we live in currently, the corporation, and then hate it to the point that you want to separate, to the point that you could ignite enough energy within yourself, flame, to really go and separate and burn through reality, which is one of the best things that Aries is good at. This is why it's the beginning of everything. This is why Aries, if you have seen, he's always in the process of trying to give to birth to something. This is why he's not available all the time. He's like trying to give birth to something. This is like he's always looking ahead.
Always looking ahead, always trying to get one up on other people. That's how Aries takes power, by being faster than other people, by being ahead, one step ahead of everybody else. That's definitely how.
And this is why it plays out in every single countries or every single corporation that we need heads of companies, head of a house, head of a kingdom, head of a monarchy. You have a head, don't you? And then you watch a TV that has its own head, and then they present you certain information, which lead us into them programming your own psychology, which is heavily correlated to the first house. Since these were the first appearance through your first house, I'm pretty sure you learn how they program your mind. So now you look at your body a certain way, which obviously affect the way you deal with your relationships. Now you can't get in certain relationship because you feel you look this way, or you have a certain personality issue. And this thing about how the first house, if it's not correlated properly, they'll prevent you from connecting with your home, your family, aka the black sheep. You're separated, and the square will create more aggravation, and then that will also prevent you from getting into business status, your public life, which takes a lot of tougher skin and not as much sensitivity like Aries. Aries are very sensitive into people who go against what they gave birth to, because like you gotta realize each sign is related to an organ. So when a sign initiates something, it's almost like when you go against it, you kind of rejecting. Like an Aries give birth to like a brain and nervous system signal. So when an Aries do that and you try to stop it, it's almost like offensive to the Aries, because the Aries is trying to initiate something, and he's lost in that organ. If you get what I'm trying to say.
And in their individuality, you try to make them consider other people. You try to make them consider you and all of these different things. Then they can't act, based off of how they want to act 100%. And look at
that area of life is very important, because the brain and nervous system program the body, and then if it programs the body, that leads to what? That program the immune system, the lymphatic system, and also what? It leads into the kidneys, which is very important since the adrenal glands is there. How do you balance your brain and nervous system with other people? Because you gotta realize each organs some organs are connected to more of your social life. They all the way to the point that for you to connect with people, you need to have sex. Look at the houses that rule that organ. The 7th house, the 8th house, where maybe in the first house is more separate. You are in your own head, like literally. Like that's how much head you gonna be. And that's why it's so personal and shit like that. But this is why it makes so much sense.
And why you can even associate with Aries with sex and the desire of sex. I would look at Aries, maybe not even the sex aspect, but busting the nut. That's Aries.
Yo, that's how I see God gave birth to the world, yo. Yeah. The Big Bang. This is the Big Bang.
The big nut. Don't kill me. That's funny. But that's real, and that's the first separation from a collective whole. Look at the first house coming from the 12th house. This is why I'm saying, where do you separate from everybody else? And understanding that is how you can join the collective energy in the most holistic and positive way. Without understanding what is separate from you, from everyone else, you won't have power and control over your first house, and somebody else is going to insert identities and personalities and interests for you to go and take. So really understand what your desires are, what makes you selfish, and utilizing that selfish axle. And that's how you take power control over the first house.
And it's okay to be like the god of war and shit like that, because you're gonna go with war with society and shit like that.
Sometimes find that equilibrium. find the equilibrium. So much people are scared to define themselves as an individual or to separate. But you already separate. You already are. That's
it's just people perceive like first house energy of Aries very opposing because like I want to be myself. I am, and then a lot of time it gets perceived as like you separating, but like I am, and like you always like I am. Yeah,
I am. That's why you shouldn't be getting mad at Aries when they're being selfish.
Yeah.
You understand how deep and an important aspect that is, because you will lose yourself without that energy. And Aries is there to remind you about that every day. Every day when the Aries was doing them and not thinking about you, they were reminding you, nigga, what's your first house looking like? Nigga, look after yourself.
And like you
100%.
And like you basically you become your, because you develop your own first house, your own flame, your own vision, your own head. You could guide yourself, as opposed to other people who you could argue that people don't have a first house, they don't have their own head. People place different heads in there and shit like that.
100%. 100%. And look at the transition from Pisces. So it's interesting. So it's very depending on the influences, and look at the opposition to the 7th house. So you really have to take note of where you separate from everybody, and that has to be your starting point. It has to be. Looking at the 2nd house, yeah, how do you think people can take power control over their 2nd house?
So the 2nd house, it plays out through all our assets. This is like in Hellenistic astrology, they call it the gate of Hades, the house of hell. Because after you give birth to something, whatever you give birth to could become your hell, which is kind of interesting in terms of the way it gets marketed in society, because it's here, Venus rules here. So the way hell, a lot of physical things portrayed with what? Beauty, a lot of Luciferian energy, although like marketing, marketing is like the most Venus Luciferian shit you ever get into. But a lot of the ways they use the 2nd house energy is that they prevent you from figuring out your own values. Like when I came to the West, one of the things that I noticed, people were not like hold on to one value. They were like kind of iffy, which is very Christian mindset, which I agree with. But someone like who came from the East, I was like very grounded in my mindset. I was like, no, that's it. That's not how I wanted. Especially me being an Aries, having Aries and then having Taurus alignment. Like that was very already Eastern. So like I could see how without proper values, especially learning what is true values in the West, values are not sometimes the people I connect with. Values are way more deeper than that. Values is some stuff that I practice. Like values could be working out. Values could be giving to different things as opposed to things the way like maybe the way sex get portrayed in the Western world, or relationship, or cars, money, jobs. They get portrayed in a very materialistic way where you should value it, but they don't teach you how to value it in the proper way, because this is where it gets all the way to the point where Jews, they approach business with like a spiritual mindset or like a religious mindset. So like that's what I'm talking about. So you could see how they could go to the West and become like, say, the richest people ever, because they have this grounded mentalities from the East. So when they come West, when they argue all these lawyers who get lost in different thought forms, connection, relationship, they know who they are. They're stable in their mentality.
100%. 100%.
And so it's really about learning stability and how can you ground yourself in the 3rd dimension, which is very interesting because they say Earth, Taurus rules Earth. So the more you figure out about your values and true assets, is the more you figure out how you could be successful on Earth. You can figure out true ways to be successful. Like you may not need to a lot of money. You may need some money. I mean, you live on a farm, like shit like that. Like learn like true value where you're not wasted. You're not getting lost in other people's values, which is very hard. So often not to acknowledge, especially with all those physical things which we all utilize, all this shit towards physical material things that we need to use as a bitch, but we get lost into. But sometimes when you're more separated from these things, like with my parents and things like that, sometimes they don't indulge in certain things that in the West might kill people quicker, since they came from the East and they're not used to it. It's not even that they don't want, it's more like they're not as connected to it, so they could avoid them. Where in the West, you born in it, and like it's so part of you. Like if I tell you this is bad, you're gonna look at me like I'm crazy, or you're gonna look at me like a Muslim who's attacking you, trying to beat you up. But I'm trying to tell you, nah, you're gonna practice virtues and principle like Ramadan and like shit like that.
Yeah, 100%. It leads to attachment. Attachment, absolutely. Where you start attaching to certain material things instead of understanding what they're providing you. Talking to a lot of Tauruses, they always want a house. A Taurus always wants a house for some reason. He always wants to own a house, but they never understand. It's not the house that they want. It's the stability and comfort that it symbolizes that they want. So you always close yourself off to having that dream house, and when you don't get it like that, you're so attached to that material thing because that's what you've been trained to value, because maybe you didn't understand your starting point and didn't separate yourself as an individual. So you're carrying on someone else's identity or individuality or distorted individuality. You're going to have distorted value systems, and it's going to be other people's value systems coming in where they tell you value this house, value this house. You get attached to the idea of the house, but the real where the value comes from is the stability, the energetic exchange you have with the house. The house makes you feel stable. That's why it is valuable. The apple makes you feel full, nourished, and energized. You know, that's why you eat food. But then you get it so attached. So yeah, how you take power and control over that is by creating your own sets of values, and by you understanding the value and true meaning of attachment. Just like what you were saying with those Eastern traditions, how you guys understand that a little bit more better because of the society that you live in. So the attachments that you have wouldn't be as detriment. A Taurus will throw their whole life away to get the house, to get the bag. They'll ruin their whole relationships. They'll ruin everything to get that stability, because that's what's valued the most. And it comes from a lack of self-worth, lack of self-trust. People don't talk about that enough with the second house. Your trust in God we trust is on your money. Well, where is the money stored into a trust, and then you become the trustee. So there's a reason why trust is included in monetary dialogue. Because the second house deals with trust too, and money only works. It's a piece of fucking paper. You only find value in it because you trust it.
This is.
You only find value in it because you trust it.
This is why people like in high corporation, they could tell you that I own a lot of things in my second house. No, they don't own assets, but they somehow control it through the trine with the 10th house Capricorn. But you gotta understand game and shit like that. How can you own assets but at the same time not own assets and paper?
Yeah,
like, it gets that manipulative. This is why the second house opposes the 8th house. When you get deep into the true form of securities and shit like that, you realize, man, all these royal people, they're really rich and they get all these resources from some behind the scenes shit that you can't get ever access to. Because that's the shit. It was like some generational things related to I like to say the 8th house, like the dark ages and shit like that, and they have some form of connection to that. So they could it shows up in their opposition as like a lot of accumulation.
Absolutely, and look at the 8th house representing vulnerabilities and insecurities. That's definitely going to get into the way of you being able to trust, whether in a positive way or in a negative way. So 100% understanding what's going on behind the scenes really does prevent you from being able to trust, whether you have certain insecurities and vulnerabilities and certain things that you don't want to show into the light. That's what leads you to not having trust in your own ability or in the world in general, which forces you to attach to the things that you have so heavy. because you feel without them you would have a
You
loss.
can see that a lot with indigenous societies is like everywhere. They're heavy like Taurus energy. They want to get attached to the land, the mother nature, our beastly natures, which is not bad. But we're like, as you're seeing right now, we're moving to more technological world, more like masculine, father ruled as opposed to mother nature ruled. So like you shouldn't. A lot of indigenous species should not get attached, get lost in these systems, and move, but move forward. But that's the square between Aquarius, the 11th house, and then Taurus, the second house. For example, Dr. Ali Muhammad, he's all about like indigenous shit, like second house, the second house, our true values and things like that. But he's very progressive. He's heavily involved in like bringing technology and things related to that, which takes it to a whole nother level. Which is what everybody should do, and not like fight either or. It's not an opposition. You could use like you need both of them. Like this is why they may produce a lot of things that say men and females they're not good for each other, but like life cannot work without men and females. So like what's the point of like going to all these studies that is like opposing? It's kind of useless. Just tell them the story of Garden of Eden, how God told Adam to take over Eve, and like that's it.
That's it.
And like this is why people in the East don't want to get lost in all these conversations. It's kind of useless. It wastes energy. It prevents them from doing the commandments, praying, praising Allah, Yahweh, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's how you take power and control over that second house, of controlling where your attachment goes, where your trust goes, and really placing them in the right areas based off of where you separate from everyone else and what your individuality is. This is how you can establish a proper value system and proper trust. This is where your talents are. They say Taurus is the highest producing sign out of all of the zodiacs. It can also be the laziest. It has that contrast, but it's based off of where they're placing their trust. So you take power and control off of where you place your trust. People place so much trust in money, and then inflation hits, or the bank takes more money and blah, 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 and then you realize you should have been valuing other things. So to take power and control over your second house, where do you place your trust? Because that's where your money is going to go. That's where your assets are going to go. That's where your talents are going to go.
Good values develop good hormones, because of good hormones they need good values, and if you have bad values they play as negative hormones, and you see that every single time with people like bad
and long-lasting friendships
and their lack of ability to maintain like their vitality, them getting tired, where Taurus is all about like vitality. Since before Taurus there's Aries gives birth to the nervous system signal, then Taurus like brings the hormonal adaptation to the body. So if you have a proper vision and then connect it to the value system, then you can like kind of begin the birth cycle within your body, ignite your body.
100%, for sure, man. My mom is a Taurus moon, and she has friends that she's known for 30 years, probably 40 years now. You know, and I mean, for her, almost her entire life. And there was at a time when we lost our house. We literally lost the house. Taurus being too attached, it would be more devastating, you know, if you get what I mean, or there'd be so much more attachment to the house. Maybe they would struggle to preserve the house or whatever it is. But because she had friends and placed energy in those areas, they took us in. We moved into one of her friends' house, stuff like that, until we got our own place and stuff like that. But look at where she placed her trust within friendships and value, and look at how that replayed on the material plane later on. So this is what we mean, place your trust. Now you think it was all in money, but you have all this money and that you can't get certain things done. But you say if you place it in friends, you can get things done. But it's all where you place your trust.
I remind you guys, we gotta be careful. There's certain connotation with like earth element. It deals with certain like maybe people associate with like demonic energy. The shadow government could use the earth element, use materialism, money, shape, certain form, which is way easier to kind of pull us through and bring us down to reality, since that's what like the earth element deal with, like really slowing you, making you lethargic. This is why they like to say earth signs are depressed, but like earth signs are focused in the last part of the materialization. From fire and water, air, they lost in the earth part. They don't. They're not even about the whole part. They lost the end process. This is why they kind of look dead, just a dead physical shape or form.
Yeah.
While fire signs or water signs, they look alive, vital. They almost like creating a direction. And air signs, they look like everywhere, like shit like that.
Makes sense why earth signs would be more into attachment,
Yeah.
holding on to things. Because
And this is why Capricorn is the double card and shit like that.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Looking at the third house, how you can take power control over the third house. How do you think you can take power control over the third house?
Starting learning what happened to you when it comes to your early education. What you were taught in school, not only your early education through your immediate surrounding, everything was around you. Because right now, when you're in your third house, your fourth house is right there, your family, and then your assets and your value, your second house there. So in your third house, you're kind of learning all the information that allows you to develop your first kind of logical way of like understanding the world and things like that. You have your siblings there, your neighbors, your co-workers. So because it's ruled by Mercury here, and Mercury allow you to bounce different thoughts on forms with different people. And if you look at how your immediate surroundings build up, you could bounce information so fast. It's like it's very Gemini, like it's very unexpected things happens, and like and so on and so forth. And it's very easy to plant information there, since you may not be aware of the fact how it got there, since you just in your own space, and sometimes you don't know how things could be placed there.
100%, because that's how the third house is being where you build your mentalities and how you analyze. 100%, your surroundings. That's what they do. The things you're gonna analyze are gonna be in your surroundings, your immediate surroundings. They're gonna be with how your early education is going to be how you look at the world. That's what I mean. Us growing up as children and the things that we went through as children, certain mindsets that were instilled as children. Kanye said it best. Kanye, the Gemini, described the third house relationship the best. Surprise, surprise. He was like, I think it was on Fallon. You know, you tell a 2-year-old, he goes on the coffee table, and you yell at him, no, don't do that. Get off the coffee table and stuff like that. He doesn't know what a coffee table is. He doesn't give a fuck about any of that. He just received the energy. Now it's blocked, and he doesn't know why. This creative flow or this mentality is being built in his mind, and he doesn't know why. And Kanye was like, and then a bunch of things happen, and then you have a whole wall, a whole life of coffee tables that of that suppressed energy, which is very true. Taking power control over this area dictates you taking control over how you analyze and how you build your own mindsets. And sometimes this requires you to change your surroundings, to be more dynamic in your surroundings, to be more versatile in your surroundings. Look at how Harith was talking about his experience coming from the east to the west, you know. Just through the change of surroundings, you have different mindsets. And you look at him talking about battling with the different mindsets coming from over here, coming from over there, and then he can come up with a synthesis of things that is more holistic. So that's what we mean about taking power control. Now, other people can take power control of your surroundings, aka have you in the hood your whole life. Have you in the hood your whole life. And all you think is hood nigga shit, you know, hood rat shit. And that's all you're going to think about, unless you actively start to change your surroundings and environment and start to facilitate, you know, something that stimulates or to analyze something else. People be reading the Quran every day. Every day. So it's like, naturally you're going to develop all of those mentalities that is in there. Nigga, read something else. Read a comic book.
Man, one of the funniest things I experienced in the West is how, like, just people in the hood claim a certain street, and that street they would never leave. It's the only territory. That's it. That's their block. And me, I'm a person from an Eastern continent. Like, people in Africa and shit, like, they don't give a fuck about where they're from. They're more interested in, like, where can they go to be, like, successful and, like, and go and shit like that, opportunities and shit like that. But people in the West, they're in so stuck in their scarcity mindset that they want to fight for a street that I used to live in Malta, but Malta to me they called the hood, but it did not look like the hood. It didn't, that like the way people used words in the West, it it didn't make no sense to me. I was like, this place, people who own mortgages and they pay between like maybe 500k to 700k. I'm like, how the fuck this is the hood? This is a nice community that appears like the hood. What are you guys talking about? Like, to me, hood means like you. To me, like, hood means like you're from like where my parents, grandparents are from. Like, you're broke, you live in a farm and shit like that. To me, that's the hood. Like, but like Western hood is like, bro, that's not the hood. Like, bro, that's a nice place, yo.
It's funny. It's funny that you say that. Absolutely. Malta did develop into that. I get what you mean, 100%. But then that goes to show the power of the mentalities and the mindset of how you're looking at your surroundings. And how certain things happening like that will take you out of certain mindsets, you know, like certain people would be from Malton or different hoods and stuff like that. See that transition. Notice how that changes your mind and how you analyze things. It creates a big thing. And then look at how here it's describing it, whereas, you know, people are stuck in a certain reality, but not necessarily seeing the whole aspects of it, which I get what you mean. I get what you mean. Same thing with suburban areas. There's a distinct suburban mindset.
Definitely.
That unless you start to analyze with different things, talk with other things, man, it's so crazy being out here in the suburbs. So much people want to tell me about my blackness, want to tell me about Jamaica, want to tell me about all, but they don't want to fucking listen. It's like, I don't understand.
I experienced the same thing. Like the first time I experienced what they call like racism, which I call just making me pay attention to a certain attribute more. I was so surprised how much they pay attention to like a skin color. I was like, first of all, that's kind of like a useless kind of information. Like, what do you benefit from? Yeah. Like, you already see me. Like, so like I felt like they're heavy visual and heavy speaking about their visual, but like not doing action about it. And like that's the part that kind of confused me. All the way to the point like they have something like Black History Month, which is something like I never understood. I'm like, why there's other black people like other like White History Month, Indian History Month, European History Month. Like, it was so like they focus on the wrong thing. They want to do the right thing, but they focus on the wrong thing. That's how you can describe the West.
But it's those mentalities based off of certain surroundings. Certain people can get up certain mindsets because of their surroundings. AKA you in the hood. There's no way you getting outside the hood aspect just talking and interacting with hood shit, you know? And then there's deeper aspects of those environments, but you have to start analyzing.
This is one of the ways that even I think the government builds societies, but which is something people are not aware of. They build each hood, they build each community to have a certain amount of people from different geographical location, because to build a good country, a good organ, you need a little bit of people from Jewish community, the Hindu community, the black community, and so on and so forth. Like, I'm pretty sure that's how they built it. America was built by basically, or fueled, you could say, by immigrants and shit like that, or people from there. And absolutely. Then they still bring people from the third world countries just to like fund them here in the Western society. And you can see it within your community. There's this community, there's that community, and just from interacting with different community, you get all these different information. Just from living here in Canada, the amount of different group of people you go through, you could pick up so many words, languages so quickly. You learn some Punjab Indian words, you learn some Arabic, you learn some Malton and different dialect and so on and so forth. And it's funny.
It's true. It's true in certain places.
Yeah, what Gemini is about. Gemini is all about speaking, language, Mercury, analyzation, and like if you're good at really moving around and like keeping moving around, like thinking and shit like that, you could really like move around, as opposed to people who move around in one area. If you get what I have to say, their minds is circling in one area, just like more.
Absolutely, and that's the lack of curiosity. Lack of investigation.
Basically, this is where they maybe require more like the 9th house to give them. Maybe they have to go travel the world, leave the 3rd house and shit like that.
And even it being mentally, people get out of those mindsets by start thinking about other things. start not thinking about the things that their surroundings are presenting them, but doing different things. So understand, this is how you take power and control of your third house, of your surroundings. Either you change your surroundings and you can change your mentalities, or you can change your mentalities and they will change your surroundings. You can't be thinking certain things, hanging around my hood rat friends, talking about astrology and spirituality and all of this different type of shit. You can't do certain things like that. So how often are you going to hang around certain people, or how long are they going to not or resist those ideas? Maybe they'll start getting on board and stuff like that. And that's how you change your surroundings.
It's very important. Like me, I have like a lot of brothers and shit like that. So when I came to Canada, I was not very interested in like socializing, which is very important. But like a lot of people do not understand from my perspective, since a lot of us come from family, a lot of people, right? So I already could gain a lot of information from all these different interactions. Not to say that I shouldn't go.
No feminine aspect though. There's missing that.
So like that's the where.
So your daddy need a sister.
My actually parents wanted to have a sister, but they couldn't. They're having a lot of boys. But where people in the West, they may come from like small like family structures where they have like one child, two child. So that puts the kids in a position where they go out more in the world to connect with people, since they lack that more information developing within like their immediate surrounding. If you have a lot of people like a tribe around you, like it should start moving around quickly. And, like
yeah, if you don't have a dad, the world has to teach you how to be a man. Absolutely. Your mom can't do it. And vice versa. 100%. So yeah, that's how you take power and control over your third house again. You really have to control your surroundings, and that's letting your curiosity fly, and really having a command over your curiosity, and to not stop asking questions, because that's how you keep on expanding your mindset, and then expand your mindset, you expand your surroundings. Otherwise you'll just be stuck in the same mindset and routines and patterns. 100%. Looking at your fourth house, how can you take power and control over the fourth house?
So the fourth house, you're gonna look at how the family gets structured, which is a big topic right now. The shadow government want to reorientate how we view family through things like reorientating the genders, basically making certain genders orientation acceptable, a certain gender orientation not acceptable. For example, the LGBT community, how come they don't fight for like heterosexual people? Like, why would you fight for like all things related to gender, but like that one thing too, which is very weird. Which this is what make them look like they're against what they're preaching.
And what leads to fourth house is an overactive immune system. That's why they're so defensive. That's why they're always on the feel like they're being attacked. 100%. And it's that 100%. It's talking about inclusivity, but to be inclusive, you have to exclude the people who are being excluded. It doesn't work. It can't work like that. You having a foundation of inclusivity that incorporates excluding certain people, that's just bad energy in the first place. That's what Hitler thought of, nigga. The fuck? That's the exact same mentality this nigga came up with. Oh, for us to be inclusive with what I like, we have to exclude the things that we don't like. To be inclusive.
This is where Capricorn, the government, punished Cancer and all our flunked out emotional expression and shit like that. This is why a lot of boundaries and restrictions gotta be controlled in the area of the fourth house, because they say Cancer is one of the most powerful zodiac signs. But like, you gotta understand why, because it's ruled by the moon. The moon's right there. So it plays in the third dimension as them initiating all this enormous energy of reflection that cause everything to change around them, get all the way to the point like Cancer rules the lymphatic system. Certain emotional reaction like causes immune changes, which all the way leads to your bone structure and the things that make out of it. So you can see how that was just the initial response of the emotion could like make the government do certain things, because like this is where they get the government get their power from and shit like that, from the home and the family. Or what is the home, what is the family doing and shit like that.
And by making you feel certain ways, and by manipulating comfort. Look at the convenience culture, and that's provided by the government or larger structures that control certain things, which control the aspect of the comfort that you can dive
like
into.
in certain areas they could apply that, like the Cancer energy way more dominant. For example, in the Western society they give more dominant to the female, especially in the law and shit like that, all the way to the point like it plays out in like law is oriented in a way where females are set up, so when the father go to the prison, that they giving a position to get more money and shit like that. Like with child support, like small things that allow to separate the home and the family. If you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, fourth house is definitely being attacked right now, and look at with COVID, with the restrictions that went in and stuff like that, they took away your comfort and told your ass to sit home and do all of that. When that's how you take power control over your life. When somebody else controls your level of comfort, when somebody else is determining, when external or your public life, external things are affecting how your internal world is going and how your home life and your domestic life is going, you're going to be all out of whack. To have power control over your fourth house, you have to have power control over how you catch feelings and what makes you comfortable. What makes you comfortable? Start taking power control over how you become vulnerable. You see what I mean in terms of all of these other people, LGBTQ, for example, their uncomfortability is determined from external factors. That's how they don't have their fourth house in check. And look, it's all about status. I'm LGBT. I'm whatever pronoun. Like, that has nothing to do with your internal life and how you feel and how you interact in a domestic setting and how you catch feelings. This is how you take power and control over those.
To the point that like even like a good family structure develop an immune system. Like there's studies that actually show that, and I bet we could do studies between like if we bring like certain LGBT community members, and let's test out how their immune system develop as their family structure versus the natural family structure. You could definitely, I'm pretty sure you could see the system and so in longevity and long term and like what makes sense and shit like that, without extra compilation, the extra drugs, the extra insurance plan, the extra shit that they have to get sold to who?
It goes
the government.
Deep. It goes deep in that regard. Look at how I was talking about with just the lack of breastfeeding changes your gut biome. So 100% of what you're talking about and how that changes. Look at how...
And that's like frowned upon in Western society. Like with females, they're not allowed to breastfeed, or like it's not like good in like public society.
Formula.
Formula.
It's not pushed.
You should look more professional, more acceptable. You should let the shadow government do it for you. Don't use your own titties. Don't use your own fourth house. No, look, we made you a shape or form that looks like it. You big a sucker. On top of that, we can make something better than you. We could sell you. We can sell you, bro.
That's the best metaphor for that energy. 100%. Whether you drink the natural breast titty milk that God designed to be perfectly aligned with your body and not ask from, or you can be all external with the formula and stuff like that, which is trying to mimic all of that, but falls short every time.
Yeah, real that shit.
If you're not in control of your vulnerability and how you initiate your own vulnerability, your fourth house is going to be out of whack.
And
you're not going to have a stable home life. You're not going to have a stable self-image. You have to control and know how to become vulnerable. Control what makes you vulnerable. And this is how you take control over that house.
Your fourth house, it's your immune system. It what creates your bones. If you could develop like emotional stability, then you won't develop strong bone structures. So you can stand on your own. If you have bad home life, then you develop bad structure, bad bones, brittle bones, weak bones, because the material itself was weak.
Absolutely.
It's like
absolutely 100. That's for sure. What about the fifth house? How do you take power control over this house?
So the fifth house. We were speaking about that, how they planned the idea of everybody wanting to be Jesus, with especially the New Testament, and making everybody want to be on the main stage, expressing their own life, expressing their own position, and allowing them to basically oppose the government, but not knowing what the consequences of that. That's basically the Jesus story. Leo, the fifth house, and then going to the 10th house. So a lot of times they
Tupac.
set up a lot of situations where for you to express your own light, and they set up a lot of stages for people to do. This is why people become rappers. This is why people join sports. This is why people become that and that and that, which is not bad. But it becomes that you're walking on someone's stage. This is why it's so important to build your own stage, or to know the stage you're performing on, so you can use it as a bitch and know like kind of the behind the scene aspect, and actually be more focused on the stage itself instead of just the performance, and realize you're not just the performance. The whole stage is the performance. This is why you experience the consequences, not just of your action of expressing yourself, but the stage you stood on and shit like that, because you're the son of God dying on the cross. Like, you're choosing what to respond to, like your responsibility. This is why Capricorn is very harsh on those people who express like Christian like energies, or like extreme Leo, like Kanye West, and claiming he's a Christian, and him claiming he's Moses, and then Hebrew Israelites, like and so on and so forth. Like, it does not make sense.
Even down to Tupac being killed. He literally played out the Messiah archetype down to his album covers. Like, this nigga was literally the Messiah. If this nigga made an album cover of him on the cross, I wouldn't have bat in the eye. I wouldn't have bat in the eye. I would just be, oh, that's a hard album cover. No.
Yeah.
But look at how he
also, this is where they set up a lot of the sons of God, aka the Jesus we as kids look up to. Fifth house rules children, right? So this is where they set up the people who's gonna build your children mind based on the creativity and express on the stage. Look at all the kids that the music they listen to, the celebrated blood cells. Fifth house Leo rules the blood. They look up to, so they control the blood flow, and they wanna express the same things they want to express. So now the shadow government could control the light, aka punish Jesus, hit him with a rock, kill him, punish him, make him pay. Tory Lane getting sued, going to jail. Kanye West, you going through troubles with the government. Andrew Tate, Jesus getting hit with the rock. You're a light getting hit with a rock. You still need to sit down. You're not God. You gotta be part of group and bring God down here.
Yeah, but the power gets retained when you understand what it is that you're expressing, and what it is that you're expressing correlates to your deepest core. You know, what it is that you're expressing is who you are. What you're expressing is what you are paying attention to, where your attention is, and not holding too much an account of the audience. Just like what Harith was saying, that's where your power and control gets taken away, because then now you're going to start to dictate your performance based off of the reaction of the audience, and then you lose all of your creative power, because what's coming out of you is not necessarily going to come from your core anymore like that. It's to keep attention on you, to please the audience, not to creatively fulfill yourself. That's why, you know, and maybe even, you know, I'm a little bit too harsh on Jesus and how the things went down in that story, you know, because the audience would have wanted Jesus to be like, nah, fuck all of this shit. I'm gonna fuck all y'all niggas up with my Jesus power, Jesus uppercut, punching up the Pharisees and stuff like that, turn them to dust and shit like that. I swear he did that to a fig tree, allegedly, in the Bible. He looked at a fig tree and it was like, you're not producing good enough fruit, and then it zapped and it died. It's like, why she could do that to the Pharisees, nigga? But that's catering to the audience. He had a creative aspect that he wanted to show and push out. And this is how you take power and control over this area of your life. What you're creating and presenting to the world, your expression of self, shouldn't be dictated by the audience's response. It shouldn't be curated based off of the audience's response. You're taking your power away now. And now, just like what Harith was saying, the stage is somebody else's stage, and the performance is somebody else's performance.
And
it's not coming from your heart.
And then you realize every situation is almost like a performance. Because this is why they say Leo, the fifth house, kind of dealing with drama, being dramatic. And life has a sense of drama to it. And you can see how you could benefit of knowing how to be dramatic, in a sense, because like you know how to make a scene. This is why I'm pretty sure a lot of Leos are into movies, because they know that energy.
And become actors 100%. and coming from the fourth house, where you know how to be comfort and you know how to establish vulnerability. This opens the access for the creative expression to be its best. But if you're not open to vulnerability, you this is how Leo's greatest fear is being embarrassed on the stage. Leo's energy is to laugh, but they hate being laughed at. That is not the energy Leo is, but that's through the lack of vulnerability and lack of knowledge through the vulnerability that comes on. So to take power control of this area, that creative expression that comes out really has to be true to your heart, and not just be something that you're entertaining, not just be something that you're into, because all of that's created from something else. It has to be something that's coming from within that you are illuminating, and whether that takes shape and form, if you're messing with external things, whatever, but it has to be an internal light. And if it's not an internal light, it's someone else's light, and you don't have power over that area of your life.
Man, the worst thing that not only that you get your own Jesus killed, but they give you your own lights of creation. So when they kill you get that killed, it's like you're beyond lost, yo. You don't even have a starting point.
Yeah, 100%. And then, how do you think the sixth house? You can take power control over the sixth house.
So the sixth house deal with like health, routines, pattern, how you service the world, people. They even associate with slavery, which I understand because I understand because you have to enslave yourself in some way, shape, or form to kind of serve the world and shit like that. And like this is why it's the Hermit card. We have to separate and really meditate and be on your own path and really practicalize on what you do. But what they done here in the sixth house, that I believe they could come up with preset routines and patterns. They sell that to people. This is why it plays out as like, for example, personal trainers, they sell programs and shit like that, but that's them selling certain routines and patterns and then telling you to follow it. Right now in your life, you practice certain routines and patterns that associate with certain health, certain ways to affect your health. But what you don't realize is that these the same thing that leads to your health problem, like all the way to the point your daily habits that been planted there for like from like the beginning of your time, like the way your
100%.
family feed you, like all the way you could argue that the shadow government planted their bacteria in your own digestive system by controlling the health sector and learning all the many detailed aspect that goes into food, health, and shit like that.
And even stress that comes from work life and all of that is releasing all of these stress hormones, which deregulate the hormones that help you have better digestion, that help you have release serotonin and dopamine and the feel good drugs and the stuff that makes you happy and content. Cortisol, the stress hormones, really prevent those type of stuff. So 100%. And that's the tendency of the sixth house and Virgo, worrying and overanalyzing.
And this is why it's bad to really be in a situation where you're provided with a lot to digest. You're continuously get through information, knowledges, mentalities, and when it comes to the sixth house energy, you need time to assimilate it, practicalize it, really integrate these experiences of like what you've done, so you could actually facilitate, so you could speak about it. This is why shit like that. Like Virgo, Virgo, they're not like Gemini. Virgo, they won't talk about something they didn't do, or the idea did not practicalize and did not practice. While Gemini is willing to talk about something they never done just for the sake of developing their own form of mentalities.
100%. 100%. Yeah, Virgo is about talking about those receipts, talking about the facts, talking about the things that they have done, 100%. But without having, say, the fifth house or Leo, without a creative expression of that internal light, what are you going to perfect in your sixth house? What are you going to set a routine and pattern to refine? It's the other person's act that other person's entertainment and individuality, or that external individuality is what's going to be, and then it manifests as worrying, and it manifests as, you know, slavery and
This is
service.
why like the school system would have been way better if it starts from the fifth house, allow us to express ourselves, and then we could develop the routines and the structure to reorientate it, as opposed to just them provide us with these routine structures, learn these words, learn the grammar, learn these science, and so on and so forth. But then we have to go our own path, figure out our own self creativity. This is where people might go to school for 20 years and then figure out, oh, I want to do something else, like I want to be a rapper, like shit like that.
It's because they skipped this part 100%.
Yeah, a lot
and don't
and
go
a
through
lot of
the
times you
refinement.
can't blame them, since a lot of things providing the sixth house makes sense. Like a lot of things that make sense, sometimes they will prevent you from moving fast in terms of reaching your dream. This is where like kind of the 12th house, your dreams an illusion, opposite the sixth house. The obviously you need the sixth house to anchor the 12th house into existence, but a lot of sixth house activities sometimes prevent you from getting to the 12th house, your dreams and illusions.
Having a broader imagination, because you're trying to focus on what's tried and true. You can't start necessarily new things, you know, while you're trying to refine something. That's 100%.
For example,
I don't like how they talk about the slavery. Sorry.
no, I agree with you. You could argue that 12 has some form of subconscious slavery too. You could argue there's a form of slavery that could be applied to every house, to be honest.
And that's what I mean. It's that perspective of slavery that we have. I guarantee in the past, slaves didn't look at it like that. Or you're a slave now. We're all slaves. What the fuck? We're all slaves to the government that we work for. Where they're siphoning money from us off a fictitious system that you think is all right, but it's all made up concepts just to solely make you work and to make you produce an output. So in that essence, we're all slaves. So if you're looking back at the time and you're saying niggas are slave, you're a slave now. So the niggas was doing whatever the fuck you was doing. So if sixth house represents work now, who the fuck else was working? The slaves was working now. The slaves was working then. If you want to look at it like that, but I don't like looking at it like that. I like looking at it as the apprenticeship level. Whether, like what I mentioned before in other videos, in terms of your job can be your first business partner, and aspects like that. The refinement process, the building and the accumulation of certain skills and talents and stuff like that. It can really start to set you off. Being the apprentice, doing an action on a routine basis, building it into a habit, refining it so that you can become the expert and bring that out to the external world and stuff like that. You know, our apprentices, slaves and stuff like that. Same thing with indentured servants. You know, I mentioned indentured servants, even in the States. After their time serving, they went and bought land and bought slaves. So it's like the time that they spent being a slave, allegedly, built them up to reach a certain point where they can take the position that they were. So it's like, yo, being that slave trader asked to be a slave owner, if you get what I mean. That energy within that's what routines and pattern can really do. So that's why you take power and control over this area of life. What routines and patterns do you solidify, and what are you refining? Your routines and patterns, if you don't have power control over these things, and it's coming from some external things where they're determining your routines and patterns and your habits, you're being stressed about external things that don't have to do with the creative spark that you're releasing from inside of you, then you're not in control of the sixth house. Maybe you are that slave that's working for someone else, and that's a routine and pattern that can go on and on and on and on and on. But you can take power and control over that. The thing that you're building and building routines and power and structure on is going to lead to a point that's going to advance you forward. It's not going to keep you stuck. Routines and patterns that keep you stuck is how you take your power away from the sixth house. Routines and patterns that push you forward is how you take
this
power
is the
control.
beauty of it being a mutable sign, because you continuously being meticulous, changing things. The last thing, you won't get stuck to a routine or pattern, because the whole point
Yeah.
is like continue to create routines pattern on yourself. That's why it's important to know astrology is a transition, and you need to be willing to transit from different routines, see how that routine work, what did it help you manifest, then change it a little bit, and then from there you can work on it. Like now that's some Virgo shit.
100%. What about the seventh house?
So
How can you take power and control here?
by basically learning how you structure your relationship and the people you want to connect to, in terms of the seventh house is all about relationships that you want to enjoy, but the last time you want to spend your time enjoying relationship with people who are not who will lead you away from your second house, since the seventh house in conjunct the second house. Sometimes a lot of relationship leaves us away from our sense of security, stability, since there's a lot of misunderstanding there. But we need to make that understanding by making our relationships some form related to the sad exaltation, being ruled in Libra too, and not focusing too much on the Venus aspect of it, and learning how to be more structure orientated. Because I feel like the way society is set up, they teach us how to be more just liberal, just to connect, and just be more relationship orientated, where
And no practicality that comes
and there's
from
no
that,
purpose.
yeah.
And like I remember coming to the West, when I appreciated how liberal people are and how open they are, but at the same time, like, it didn't make sense, since I'm like, we like, we're kids, like we have nothing to offer each other, and like we like there's no point of connecting in a relationship if you don't have nothing to offer each other. But I could see how connecting in a relationship could create the opportunity to have something to offer for each other too. Like, you argue for both
Yeah.
sides.
I get what you mean. Yeah, it does lead to that. And that's why Saturn's exalted there, because teamwork really makes the dream work. And through your relationships, you can really solidify things, structures. That's how structures get built, through teamwork and through compromise. 100%. Through compromise. A system that's not about compromising. Look at the seventh house opposition. The first house, just individualism and selfishness. No structure can be taken from there. That stuff actually that where you separate, that destroys the structure that you're being taken apart from. So yeah, 100%. Your relationships is really you blending your energy with other people. Your seventh house is really how you mix and mingle your energy with someone else's energy to find an equilibrium. So you don't have power in this area when your relationships aren't 50-50, and you feel that your relationships become a responsibility. That Saturn exaltation turns to something sour, and then they're starting to control and structure your life in different ways that you don't want. But with that equal 50-50 relationship in terms of blending energy, and sometimes it could be more based off of the percentage level and stuff like that, based off of what's going on, based off of the relationship. It definitely does change, but it should be a net balance, at least in terms of the relationship. If you want positivity to come from it, then you can take power and control over, because just like what I was saying, like that situation with my mom and her friends helped out, a situation where partnerships, blending your energy with someone else can help you solidify your position in the world, can help you understand more about yourself, can help you learn how to establish balance in different situations. If you have bad relationships that are taking power and control over you, you're probably not going to know how to initiate relationships and how to blend your energy with other people, because you're always victim to some forceful energy that's trying to control your energies. So being too complacent, being too compromising and stuff like that, you're giving too much percentage away. So really understanding what a 50-50 relationship is, and initiating relationships based off of 50-50 principles, initiating relationships based off of mirroring principles, trying to get energies that balance your energies, whether it be somebody who agrees with your energy or somebody who disagrees. You kind of need both of those relationships in order to establish an equilibrium. So if you feel like there's a lack of balance within your relationship, you don't have power control over this area, and you can take power and control over it by how you initiate your relationships and making sure that they're 50-50, communicating these things, letting the person know what 50-50 even looks like. So that's why relationships always fail, because everybody's trying to compromise, but they never really communicate what those compromises should be and what they should look like, how the friendship should be, and talk about those things. Literally
I
mention it.
agree. How maybe that's why liberalism as a theology fails, because it's cardinal. They initiate. It's very hard to sustain that relationship. It's all about the conversation.
And when it's initiated based off of bad principles, there's no way that it can
And
be
this is
sustained
what big.
off of lack
And
of
this is
50-50.
what begins like the fall season. Like I'm pretty sure, like with all your relationships, they lead to some form of fall. That fall obviously led to some form of transformation. Eighth house, which we'll get into, and then some form of like spiritual, like ascension, like understanding something.
The seventh house is you presenting your individuality, yourself that you have refined through the first 6 houses into the public stage. And this is the first opportunity or chance to blend it with other individual people. So it's really showing and tell what you've been refining and how much sense that you had made to allow you to find the best compromise, if you get what I mean.
And then, like I realized, like coming in like Western society, the most powerful energies you could tap into is like Libra energy, 7th house energy. Like knowing how to be very thoughtful on the way you communicate. If you could really do that, man, you could get yourself into like a lot of like good relationships and like make money and things like that. Basically, like
start those relationships.
Like
based off of those
relationships
premises.
allow you float your way through life, which is kind of funny to say.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, your relationships are very important. They're very important in terms of how you mix and mingle your energy, and it shows on how you are going to deal with people at large. 100%. So yeah, you take power and control over this by you creating your own relationship contracts, your own contracts. Instead
your
of
own esoteric lawyer. Like Libra is all about being a lawyer. Like you go to lawyers, you see lawyers. Like develop your own internal lawyers, yo. Like you need to like Libra is all about being in the spot. And this is why lawyers get paid a lot, because they're doing some high level communication within the spot to balance things out and shit like that. That's why they look professional, clean, but they're still getting the job done. That's Saturn and Venus at the same time.
The icebreakers and stuff like that. Exactly. If you're not writing down the type of relationship that you want to have, then you don't have power and control over that area. If you're not in touch and conversating with that esoteric internal lawyer, your internal esoteric lawyer, going over these relationship contracts, rewriting. Remember, a contract is a negotiation. Rewriting certain things and handing it to the other person. The person doesn't want to do it. That's fine. Move on. Or you can have a dysfunctional relationship and sacrifice everything else in your life. And your shit, nigga, that's up to you.
This is why the 6th house is like before the 7th house. If you don't have your shit together, and like, what's the point of like a relationship? It's like, we all flunked out, yo.
It's not gonna work out at that point. 100%. What about the 8th house? How do you think you can take power
So the
control over
8th
here?
house is basically the government understand we all as humans, we have vulnerabilities, and basically they benefit from that, since a lot of us we don't want to do the power and control aspect of the vulnerable thing that leads into certain things. For example, if they use certain vulnerabilities against women to get makeup, like which might be more physical, related to the 2nd house, but that all comes from them attacking their image behind the scene, making them not appreciated, make them pay attention to more lacking and shit like that, so that they have to fulfill more with the physical shape or form. This is why it plays out through females, as them maybe more be into like indulgent in food, but they indulge in food to fulfill an emotion or a feeling. That's how even people get fat and shit like that. Or this is why people who are skinny or more thin just avoid food, because in the behind the scene realm it's the same way. They're not so active that it leads them to want to do a lot of things physically. So like So the eighth house, they do. These are like the house of witchcraft, the house of like sacrifice, pedophiles,
Occult.
MK Ultra, or all the shit that scares you and you don't want to go into. The behind the dark you don't want to talk about. This is what they use against us since they're so deep in that world. And if I argue they rule the world from any perspective, they rule like from the eighth house behind the scene, literally the shadow government. And they're opposite to us,
100%.
like on Earth, which is the second house, Taurus. So it's like,
And it makes sense to put so much energy there. Look how Scorpio represents our reproductive organs and stuff like that. Through controlling a person's eighth house, you control their reproductive systems and a whole bunch of aspects within their life. But just like what Harith was saying, how it leads to the physical. When you're vulnerable about certain things, it trickles down into the physical world.
like they could sell,
Yeah,
they
when
could
you're
sell things
defensive.
like pornography way easier and make money just like that.
100%. Drug dealings in the eighth house too. You know, because you have to do it behind the scenes and stuff like that. Illegal drugs and all of those
Look
aspects.
at when, like, remember when Pluto went to Scorpio in the eighth house and the whole epidemic area, like how the amount of death,
AIDS.
drugs, sexual transmitted diseases. I bet anybody at that period of time during the crack epidemic and all the in America, man, that was probably the most Hellenistic, dark I could get ever. I could just imagine the people who lived from that experience. We wouldn't even get it.
We wouldn't get it. Kendrick talks about it. It was like Section 80. You know, the Ronald Reagan generation, the people who learned to do everything spiteful. You
And like
know what I
one of the
mean?
things, like exactly like Kendrick Lamar, dude, this guy had this in his recent album, the song "Father Time." Like I'm a person who had like a strong father figure time in my life, like maybe too aggressive too. His song about knowing what it's like not to have a father and grow up without a father, that father time. I'm like, this guy went so in and like describing the experience really, and then bring it into reality. And like actually that shit was like powerful.
100%. So that's how you take power control over that eighth house. Look at how, say, within that song, he's talking about his vulnerabilities, his insecurities, and the things that had built up. But you can use them, and he did utilize them in specific
And guess
ways.
he's talking about his vulnerability on a stage where he's getting paid millions. Like that's what Dola speaks about.
Exactly. And he used it to get to that point.
Which makes a lot of sense. How if you focus on the second house, materialism will bring you down more into reality. But then if everything reverse, if you focus on like dealing with like or healing the world vulnerabilities and dealing with the world issues from that perspective, you probably get ascended to like a higher level of like immortality. You're like a generational like hero, something like that. Like you transformed the world, like literally.
Literally. Your eighth house is your backstory too.
Yeah.
I love One Piece so much because of that backstory aspect. Every character has a backstory, and without knowing the backstory to a character, there's no way you can understand what they had materialized. There's no way you can understand their true value, their talents and stuff like that. Where all of that really came from without understanding the backstory. You know, you go and say all of this about certain people and stuff like that, and you don't realize that, you know, their mom died, you know, giving birth to them, and their dad held that resentment to them their whole life, and you're like, oh, this guy's too loud, I don't like him. Like, you little bitch ass nigga, you little bitch ass nigga. But that's the same thing when people don't recognize their own backstories, and that's how you get power control taken from you in this area. Now you're left vulnerable, and this is how people can use to you. The world's telling you what to feel vulnerable, that you should feel ashamed of certain aspects that you have in your backstory. That's because you never went deep enough to discover your backstory, to understand the hidden behind meaning of things. Once you understand the eighth house and the hidden behind things, you're supposed to transmute it. You can get stuck there. You transmute it by losing judgment. You have to lose judgment over your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, and you start looking at how they can be utilized. What do you think a drug dealer does? He understands your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, and serves that crack on a silver platter to help facilitate those things. Same thing with the shadow government. Same thing with everything. Just like what Harris was saying, that's such a deep energy for the shadow government to use for them to stay. Why you think elections are held in Scorpio season? It's that eighth house.
That's crazy. I remember hearing this one rapper, Freddie Gibbs. He speaking about how he would prefer if his cousin bought crack from down the street. He would prefer his cousin to come to him and buy it from him.
A lie. Oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah, that's how deep the eighth house be, and especially for you in those energies, you feel like maybe sometimes like your bloodline on you, some shit like that. Especially if you're in the shadow government level where you feel like you control the world population, like you were the father, like America, Canada, all these were like my grandparents nutsack, and all these citizens are the father of my grandfather and nutsack, and they follow our mentalities, and I could see how you be so. Can be so lost in that world. I wouldn't want to know someone who's so like deep in that world. Like it's like you can see how far your mind would go and how far you. This is why knowledge is important to know and then have a ledge, not so you don't go too far in the eighth house.
Yeah,
because some things are kind of useless too.
Yeah, for sure. You can definitely get lost in there because there's no light in it, and it's darkness. AKA, you can get lost in your vulnerabilities and your insecurities and certain emotions that you have built up based off of your experiences, especially if you don't have the right relationships that are 50-50. They're only going to perpetuate more insecurities on selves and how you feel. So to take power control over that, you have to transform your vulnerabilities. Understand that nothing that you went through ever diminished you. It only ever built you up to have more knowledge and understanding of the world. So you keep on learning or thinking about being diminished. This is what creates those feelings of shame. This is what creates those feelings of insecurities. But if you realize that God is working with you, and Harris saying nobody should get stuck in there, that's right. But everybody's afraid of the eighth house too. You have to traverse into the deeper, darker regions of you, aka so much people don't even want to talk about their vulnerabilities and their insecurities. Once you start going into the things that people don't know, they don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm a goddamn Scorpio. You best believe when I come in this bitch, people don't want to talk about what I'm talking about anymore. I'm talking about all the things that you don't want to admit to yourself, if you get what I mean. Showing you the depth of certain things. You just want to be on surface level. A nigga like me goes to shows you that you don't even really understand what the fuck you were talking about. Because it goes down so much deeper. And if you're not comfortable with your vulnerabilities, if you're not comfortable with being insecure in certain emotions that you have with that sore spot, and you don't understand it, I just took a whole bunch of power control over away. And you know what? I could do whatever the fuck I want with that type of shit. But if you understand your own vulnerabilities and know how they can be utilized, there's so much energy that can come from that. Look at people who talk about their trauma and the things that they went through. Look how that creates like a source for people to go to. So much people value people because they went through certain things, because they're vulnerable in certain aspects, because they're insecure in certain things, and they showed you how to transmute that into a healthier energy. Scorpios can go into a situation and talk about sex and their sex problems, or talk about, the taboo things, talk about death and their experience through death, all of the taboo things that people don't want to talk about, and show you the higher perspective. Show you, because this person went through death, they understand, well, they don't fear death as much anymore, or they have a higher perspective of it, or something like that, because this person's been vulnerable. I can't utilize that vulnerability for themselves anymore. They're too comfortable in that space. I can't go and use shock value. You can't use shock value against a Scorpio. It don't work. So yeah, to take power and control over this area of life, you really have to find a way to transform your vulnerabilities into power. Your vulnerabilities are power. That's when you are your most powerful. When you create the most change. When you're vulnerable and when you're pushed to a corner. Death is the ultimate change. So don't run away from those deeper, darker aspects, because that's how you take power and control over them. Because somebody else will. So you have to figure out how to use your vulnerabilities as a positive and what they can mean. Really go deep and sit with them and understand where they come from, their makeup. So, and become very knowledgeable, know it like the back of your hand, what your vulnerabilities are and what your insecurities are. So it can't be used against you when you understand it to that degree. How do you take power and control over the ninth house?
So the ninth house is all about coming up with your own philosophical system and broad understanding of the world. Like I was speaking earlier about how the people from the east will migrate to the west to gain certain things, and then people in the west will migrate to the east. Here they paint a lot of people broad understanding the world, where people have a lot of this is where miscommunication happen, where people don't know how to paint the right picture. People who lived in small communities, the opposition from the ninth house, the third house, where they didn't travel around a lot, that would prevent them from accumulating a broader like mentality and understanding how, like people like if you grew up in the west, like if you grew up as a white person in the west, you may not understand how white people in the east act like Eastern European. Or if you're a black person in the east, you don't understand black people from the west, you don't relate to their problem. So like that's what I'm saying. But like developing your own broader understanding through traveling and meeting people is very important.
Exactly. And it can be done mentally and spiritually as well.
Go faster, because this is like
yeah, for sure. But yeah, it can be done mentally as well. You can mentally travel and spiritually travel to different places and just have different experiences, taking different perspectives. Oh, you believe the world is round? Okay, fine. What if it was flat? Entertain that. And then now you have more experience. Now when you go and debate a flat earther, you already know the things that they were talking about and stuff like that. You have experience because you mentally travel and you have a broader understanding. I talked to one person and they said, don't flat earthers know, or talk about how stupid they are. And like, if you were to go to the top floor of a building, you would see the curvature, or you would see that the horizon stopped. Not saying that the world is flat or obviously it's round, simply because we see the transition of stars, and you can't see stars in the northern hemisphere, in the southern hemisphere, and that's what leads me to believe those things. But still entertaining those thoughts, what he said isn't right. There's an optical illusion. Your eyes can't see to a certain point. So and a camera can zoom in and show you that it still goes straight. But not meaning that it's wrong to have the globe Earth, but because they won't travel their minds to entertain a different perspective just to see how it is, they get so stuck into their own experiences. And then this is what creates a big head, the martyrdom, the self-righteousness and stuff like that. Once you always explore and you're forever student, this is how you take power control, because now you have more experiences. A ninth house, you can have a bunch of experiences, but they're all nonsense, they're all bullshit, and it's all external things that you were told to go and experience, or one experience facilitated in a specific area. Take power and control over that. When you allow yourself to be broad in your higher learning and your higher perspectives, the perspectives that you go to, don't limit yourself to that. Don't shrink yourself to what you can't be. Really allow yourself to be expansive and see how expansive you can be, and you'll find that you can be really expansive. So this is how you take power and control over those. You facilitate your own traveling experiences and try and go as far as much as you can. Entertain as much ideas as you can. And trust me, you'll find where your lane is and how you can expand yourself. And you'll have way more wisdom based upon it. What about taking power and control over your 10th house?
So this is understanding how the government maybe teach you how to perceive your status, instead of they prepare like statuses for you. You could become this status or join become part of this status. It's really all about status, which is something very big, like Andrew Tate speaks about. But a lot of people don't understand that our status really come from our home and like domestic issues. That's the, like, maybe you could say you choose status because like this is the home is like where you're mostly at, or where you prefer to be, as opposed to work and shit like that. And
100%.
A lot of status they prepare for people, they are built in a way they separate you from home, which literally destroy the family structure, slowly weaken you. This is why they make this is why men and females are currently separating, because they're making men getting married to their job as opposed to their women. That forces the women to separate from the men since they're married to something else. So that forces the women to what? To get a career, get married into something else. This is why, because it's almost like they try to balance out the energy. So like and shit like that.
100%. 100%. Look at the jobs. Instead of creating a job, you take another job that was already created for you. A status, a position that was already created for us. And then now you start to climb a ladder that somebody else, or the mountain, because we're talking about the mountain goat, Capricorn, the reaching the peak that somebody else had built. And I understand that energy. I have Mars in Capricorn. I have my Saturn in the 10th house. I'm telling y'all, I've been in battle with authority in the government and stuff like that my entire life. But it forces you to start building your own stage, your own ladder, your own mountain, which is a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to build your own structure for you to ascend up into. And it kind of takes longer. It's so much easier to just go and ascend a structure that was already a position, title, or the status that had already existed. And now I'm climbing the ranks because, oh, there's people at the top. And what did they do to ascend the ranks? I could just copy whatever they did because there's a structure, there's a precedent, tradition, and get to that position of status. But to build your own ladder is very hard. But that's how you take power control over it, because you build your own ladder, you build your own mountain that you're going to climb up on. All of the responsibilities that you have, it's fine. Those are the responsibilities that you want because that's what you built to have. The struggles that you have, those are fine. Those are the struggles you want to have because that's the ladder that you had built. You're not victim to somebody else's statuses and structure and stuff like that. AKA, you don't want to do certain things to get a position. You have to. You have to be a liar to be a lawyer. Look at the similarities in the word. You have to be, do certain things to be to get into certain positions. You have to be less compassionate to be a military officer. You have to be less compassionate to be a police officer and stuff like that. So to take power and control over these areas, you really have to build your own ladder and to obtain your own structure. Then all your responsibilities are going to be yours. Just like Harith was saying, opposing the home, the 10th house can get really dry when you're thinking about ambition, your position in the world, your status. That's very dry. It's not considering how you feel, and it's not considering your emotions and your level of vulnerability. So taking power control and choosing your own responsibilities gives room for you to have more vulnerability. AKA, you say you being self-employed, now you don't have to marry, say the job, or you can choose certain things so you can incorporate family aspects. Whereas when you're chasing a position, you have to sacrifice the family in order to reach those higher levels. If you guys get what I mean. So that's how you take power control over the 10th house.
I remember the 10th house. The 10th house is like where they crucify people and shit like that. Because like it's constantly about you getting crucified. That's why you go to work, you have to move a certain way. You have to uphold this responsibility. You gotta express yourself this way. You gotta control yourself. So you actually get crucified like every day in some way, shape, or form. If you go to work, you're getting crucified. Like this is as simple as it gets.
That's facts. They didn't kill Jesus when he was a fledgling. This nigga's just out here talking with the prostitutes and shit like that. They didn't give a fuck about whatever this nigga was doing. This is when you start getting traction, notoriety, building a reputation. They're like, wait, hold on. Same thing with Kanye. Nobody gives a fuck about Kanye being flunked out or saying I love Hitler if he wasn't famous and all of this. Nobody would give two shits. It's just when you obtain those statuses, those titles, that's when the crucifixion comes through. But that's why it's so important for you to build your own steps to a degree. Even if you're building someone else's steps or their own status, take out that piece, put in your own piece, and customize it a little bit as you go up. Then it'll be a slightly different structure than what you had started with. How do you think you'll be hit with the 11th house, or how we can take power control over the 11th house?
So the 11th house, so you gotta learn how to associate yourself. I feel like the 11th house is the highest octave of the third house, and then the 7th house, because this is thoughts and ideas with a purpose. Where in the third house is more like where he's getting moved around. And the seventh house is more about initiating and kind of enjoying it. Well, in the
Creating a
and
purpose.
the 11th house is more like there's a reason we gotta do this, more fixated. So here they present you with multiple groups and multiple fixated ideas and mentalities, and they present actually these ideas as being fixated, as being stubborn, which is they kind of to make you disassociate from different groups of people. So now while everybody's practicing the 11th
Yeah.
house energy being associative, they all are disassociating themselves from association. Just like this is what
100%.
politics, the government are, the ministries, the federal state they gotta
The
connect with
FBI, the
Congress.
CIA.
Oh, I like we to catch Trump, but Trump banks in Russia. It gets crazy.
100%. And we can see social movements and humanitarian movements, 11th house energies. A lot of them always start off good with the right energy or based off of positiveness, but it always gets hijacked. It always gets too interpersonal, if you get what I mean, because it's so powerful, it can be utilized for different things. So that's how the power gets taken away when 11th house is dealing with the sacrificing of your individuality for a bigger purpose, so you can focus on a bigger ideal. But you take power control away when that purpose isn't aligned with who you are, and people are forcing you to abandon self-identity because it is most logical, because that's what's going to push things forward, not necessarily because you see the social cause as reason enough to abandon a worthy cause, where I can abandon my ideal of self and join the collective. When it's based off of that energy, hey, ain't nobody can knock you. And those people that you associate yourself with, it's going to be a large thing. Then you guys can really focus and fixate, because ego's not getting in the way. When you let power control being taken into what social causes you're a part of, someone else's ego is leading you into that, or ego's always going to be involved. And you're going to feel left out, and you're going to feel separate, and you're going to force yourself to disassociate. Aquarius in its maximum power can control emotions, but when it gets too negative, it starts to dissociate too much, and this is where you get too intellectual, and you start thinking of the mathematical statistically. Well, if we were to kill all the homeless people, we would have this much more land. That's where Aquarius will get you. You'll start contemplating killing motherfuckers because it's more logical, and stuff like that. And we could save the animals. If we kill people, we'll be killing less animals. Like that's the type of shit that you get to, where it's true. You're right. But is that what you really want to be doing?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Because here's the fixated portion of the winter season. So this is like really harsh here. Like things are just clashing, ideas, mentalities.
Debates, 100%. So if you're going to abandon your ideals of self and become associated with a large body of group, with the social movement, it better be worth it. It better be something that you could put your whole heart behind. It better be, or else you will suffer from that. So that, or have your power taken from your association. And then you can't be larger than yourself. You can't be larger than yourself if somebody's taking power control over your 11th house. You can be larger than yourself when you take power control over your 11th house, and you'll resonate with what you attach yourself to. What about the 12th house? How do you take power control over your 12th house?
So the 12th house, we gotta realize of like we're living in a matrix, in a dream and an illusion, and we were born into like a dream and an illusion that someone built it from their own dreams and illusion. So we gotta realize there's no such thing as a starting point. We continue to move from one dream to another dream to another dream to another dream. So the greatest idea you could come up with, the starting point as right now is like it's starting your own dream. Like this is the best starting point I'm giving you. Like having your own dream and then going forward. Like that you could intercept their own what they're done right now, making everybody live within a dream within a dream within a dream. If you ever seen the movie, I forgot what it's called, but it's about like living with which is like you'd be surprised at how people live within a person's dream, who's in a person's dream, who's in another person's dream, and like you want to kind of figure out your own dream. which is might be very hard, since how dreams get influentially settled to our subconscious life and our daily life. We may pick up a certain imagination, or we may not. We may realize that also they may not be sustainable, since this is the house of like I like to say like mental illness. What's not realistic, but it's not that it's not
Self-undoing.
unrealistic. It's unrealistic, so we could make it realistic, like with the sixth house. So there's a purpose for it. There's a reason.
That's what winter's about.
Basically, yeah.
Experimenting different ideas of how we can better facilitate a spring. And if we don't creatively imagine, we won't take into consideration of everything that exists, and we'll get lost in the influences that do move us and what we give birth to. You thought it was your kid, you thought it was your baby, but he came out, redheaded, and it's like, well, you ain't never had no redhead, and you got that bloodline, and you started thinking about this shorty was fucking other niggas. This shorty was fucking other niggas. What you give birth to didn't turn out to be whatever it was. It turned out to be somebody else's seed. It turned out to be somebody else's imagination, somebody else's influences that had slipped itself into your first house, your identity, and how you present yourself into the world. 100%.
A lot of the dreams and illusion right now we're experiencing. That's the stuff we're arguing, debating about. Gemini, the third house, squares Pisces, the 12th house. But also, a lot of our problem came from integrating someone's dreams and illusion. This is the opposition between the 12th house and the 6th house. But then there's the other square with the 9th house, where we going to experience and live out someone else's dreams and illusions. They can become their prophets and shit like that.
100%. 100%. And that's having your power taken away from these aspects. You take power of these aspects by diving into your subconscious, understanding your subconscious mind, the deeper nature of things, understanding there's more. And a lot of times this is Pisces, why it can cause mental illness, because that's overwhelming. To open yourself to the possibility of everything, to notice the influence that everything is having, as it can be very overwhelming. But if you don't do it, you won't know what's behind your subconscious and the creations that you have. There's going to be all these different influences that are going on. You take power and control over your 12th house by you controlling or manipulating your subconscious mind and moving. This is why I'm a huge proponent, maybe it's because I'm a water sign, of controlled delusion. I'm a huge proponent of that, because niggas always trying to bat you down into the realm of reality and shit like that, and trying to tell you that certain things can't be, and sometimes things aren't precedent, or sometimes things aren't as visible. The 12th house, behind the scenes, undercover, the subconscious, the influences that you don't normally see. And niggas is always trying to tell you that you can't be delusional, that you can't imagine, that you have to go off of what's already pre-existed. And those things have influences that they do. Just like what Harris says, dare to dream, dare to believe and expand, create your own belief system.
There's a reason.
Now you're restructuring where your influences are coming from, because you don't believe in what everybody else is telling you to believe. You have your own beliefs. And that's fine. You're going to run into your own problems, and then you can correct your beliefs based off of the problems that you have. You can correct it, but at least you're moving into a realm of reality where you're controlling the influences, and you're starting off clean instead of getting the jumbled mess of somebody else's belief system.
This is why I feel like Saturn, when it goes to Pisces, is gonna bring the reality for a lot of us belief system, and like make us see also this is like manifesting dreams and illusion. I could just see that, and how hard would it be to anchor yourself in reality through dreams and illusion too. So there's gonna be an interesting energy.
I think I see that makes me think of tough skin.
Dude,
for some
strong
reason,
aura.
where maybe you can't be penetrable, but how are you going to be taking things in? You know what I mean?
That makes sense. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
But yeah, guys, that's how you take power control over your life and become a co-creator with God. You have to check all of these boxes, and you see how it all proceeds to each other in a cyclical fashion and presents each other. So trust me. Oh, you're like, oh, I didn't correct or take power control over my 12th house or my 10th house or my 11th house. You nigga is coming back. It's a cyclical nature of things. This is why you can't neglect it. So if you want to be an active participator in the creation of your life, you have to, follow like what we were just breaking down and check off all of these boxes of the 12 houses. And then once you got that down, now you're in union with Yahweh. Yahweh says I am. You say I am too. You know what I mean? Like it'll really be that, and you'll be right. And you already are doing that now, but in such an unconscious way. Now we can be conscious co-creators with God.
Realize shit. Yeah.
100. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
Take care.
Peace out. Check out our website, Truspace.biz, our Instagram, Truspace_. Give us a like, subscribe, comment, talk with us. Let us know what you want to hear, what you want to see. We're down for it all. And yeah, thanks for your time.